getting a bid. I'm getting nothing for Christmas. Papa me getting nothing for Christmas. Hey, hey, Papa a naughty guy. Papa me getting nothing for Christmas. I don't know the reason why. Christmas Eve, I on the block, man, I drink it crazy like a big shot, man, I eat fat food. But something I forgot, I see this man in my gallery. I drop a big rocky all out, oh. Young boy, you better stop, it is me Santa Claus. With a Christmas Eve draw, I on the road with Santa Claus. Tell me what I got, is it a TV? No. STV box? No. A Stallion foot? No. A what? No. You said, I know when you've been naughty, I know when you've been nice. You went to MCF, you stole those people's rights. You cooked some food for people and you didn't wash the rice. You been getting out and white, you still from out your eyes. Cause I'm getting nothing. I'm getting nothing for Christmas. I'm getting nothing. I'm getting nothing for Christmas. Papa me getting nothing for Christmas. Hey, naughty guy. Papa me getting nothing for Christmas.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Washed on the house, I paint the gallery. I put the Christmas lights on the Christmas tree. I have my grandmother bake ham and turkey for all of them late fresh people to be coming by me. I wipe down the tiles, don't tell I
Good evening. I think we are ready to start the show.
and I stand still. I'm getting a bit. I'm getting nothing but Christmas. I'm getting.
Hello. Okay.
We're live.
I'm getting.
Hi. Good evening, friends and loyal opposition, members of the loyal opposition. This is the Marcia Week Show, and this is Marcia's sister, not Marcia. I trust that you are all doing well on this Friday evening. And as you know, good evening again, members of the loyal opposition, and welcome to the Marcia Week Show. As you can imagine, Marcia has been doing quite a bit, and we know that she's preparing for a very important event. And so I anticipate that we will do justice to the show this evening. I am supposed to be joined by Janine Butcher. I will see if she's been able to get in. She was having, like me, a couple challenges with her microphone, but persistence never fails. And we also have supporting us Dave. So Dave is Janine in with us this evening? And let me welcome her if she is. But we plan to have a good show this evening. There's a lot happening. And of course, we know that we're in the season of Christmas. And therefore, it is very important that we recognize the purpose of this period. And before we get into talking about the things we have to talk about, we know that as loyal citizens of Barbados, and certainly as a loyal opposition, we do things properly here, and we start with a very important reminder of why and what we are loyal about, and that is the national anthem. And therefore, I ask that we now join in the national anthem. And as usual, we will do that in a manner that is duly respectful of our nation and our flag. So can we have the national anthem, please? Thank you very much. And I was happy to see that when I signed on some time ago, there were almost 30 people waiting. And I really want to say hello to some of our loyal, um, I should say, loyal members of the opposition and faithful viewers of this program. Hello to Vernon Garnes, to Gad, to Jefferson Sobers. And Jefferson is wishing a good night to the loyal opposition, to Judy Dilts, a very faithful sister. Of course, good evening, Marcia. Judy, unfortunately, Marcia is not with us, but I can tell you that she's working hard to put on an excellent production on Sunday. And I just want to remind persons to take advantage of that and support what is indeed a marvelous opportunity for the young people with whom Marcia does a lot of work. And she has been doing this for a couple of decades now. And one of the unsung heroes, and supported, of course, by Dave. So we have, I see Jacqueline Allen, Marcia Miller, Joyanne Faith, Cecilia Miller, of course, Tim Ward, Peter King, and Patrick Designs, Mildred Ben, Marcia, Lady Bim, Wendy Ford Griffith, and I can go through Mystic Angel, Emil Tull, Michael Jilts, Beverly Prescott. It is if I haven't called your name, I'm sorry, I'll probably get around to doing that. What it says is that there are so many people online and wishing each other well. What I recognize is that this program is so important to Barbadians in terms of the education. And I want people to appreciate the hard work that goes into this program. Marcia is a stickler for professional standards, and I think that that is a beautiful lesson to be learned by others. I'm hoping that Janine has been able to join me. I guess when she does, I will see her. Many of you are familiar with Janine. She's a young, dedicated, hardworking young woman, Janine Butcher. You've seen her on Marcia's show. She was on quite recently. And what it really says to me when I look at young persons like Janine and the young men, Thierry and all those featured, we are very familiar with Kimar Stewart and so on. But I must tell you that it really is a pleasure to work with these young people, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are going to be making things happen. They're the ones carving out a path for themselves. But of course, I want to let us know, spend some time looking at what it means to be celebrating Christmas. And I know you thoroughly enjoyed what Dave shared with us, prepared with lots of love and attention in terms of independence. And I'll now ask him to share with you some of the good old-fashioned Bajan Christmas. And you can share your comments as you view that as to what that has meant to you as Barbadians. So over to you, Dave, and let us bring some of those memories forward for us to enjoy. So as we wait for that to come up, I am sure many of you can think about what makes Christmas special. What are some of the things that you recall that you enjoy doing even today? So here we go. We'll just capture some of those things, which will bring back, I'm sure, many positive memories, even in times of challenge.
Hang all the mistletoe, I'm gonna get to know you better this Christmas. And as I trim the tree, how much fun it's gonna be together this Christmas. The fireside is blazing bright, and we're caroling through the night. And this Christmas will be a very special Christmas for me, yeah. Christmas time. time is here. We all must be gay. Everybody merry. Everybody happy. No one must be sad.
Even Santa's feeling real
Glad. So let's join in unity and have a rock steady Christmas party.
Hear the church bells ringing.
Hear the choir sing. Join our simple sermon and enjoy the festive season. Hey, hey, hey. No one must be sad. Even Santa's feeling real bad. So let's join in unity and have a rock steady Christmas party. Hey, hey, hey. So let's join in unity and have a rock steady Christmas party. This is the mistletoe jam. I like to party all night and dance to the mistletoe jam. The mistletoe. Everybody kiss somebody. This is the mistletoe jam. I like to party all night and dance to the mistletoe jam. Mistletoe. Everybody kiss somebody. Everybody kiss somebody. The children wait for Santa to bring them some nice gifts. You hear them promise Mama to do no more mischief. The mistletoe, the Christmas tree, the church bells ringing round us. The Christmas cards, the presents too. These are the things of Christmas. These are the things of Christmas. I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus underneath the mistletoe last night. She didn't see me creep down the stairs to have a peep. She thought that I was tucked up in my bedroom fast asleep. Then I saw Mommy tickle Santa Claus underneath his bed so snowy white. What a laugh it would have been if Daddy had only seen Mommy kissing Santa Claus last night.
But Maisie, in all honesty, why not under the Christmas tree? Maisie, I am vexed because you're making movements with Santa Claus. Maisie, where is the reindeer? Maisie, I ain't seen no sleigh. If he had no reindeer nor sleigh, he came on the
Well, thank you very much. And before I hand over to Janine, I want to say that we really have to thank Nicholas Branca for the work that he's doing with our young, talented musicians and creatives to listen to those traditional, what I would call Christmas standards that we hear annually to spooge is really a beautiful thing. But Janine, you are of a different era. So let me welcome you and perhaps hear from you, within the context of all that's happening now. What do you think is happening for Barbadians in the context of our arrangements with the IMF, the impact of the IMF on Christmas and, the measures that we've gone through, we're going through. And from the perspective of a young person, what is this Christmas likely to be for you?
Hey, good night to the loyal opposition. You can hear me? Because I was
Yes, I
having
can
some
hear you
technical
very well. I'm
difficulties.
happy you got it sorted out.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here with you guys tonight. Thank you to be able to co-host with Miss McLean tonight. I hope that everyone is hearing me well. She did say that she's hearing me. And in regards to what the IMF has in regards to the country, and my mic is going in and out. I'm hearing myself. You can let me know if you're still hearing me.
I'm still hearing you, yes.
Okay,
Hmm.
great. So in regards to what is happening and the measures that the IMF has on the country, I do think that this Christmas is going to be a very hard one. People are going to have to do a lot of window shopping instead of actually shopping in the store. Wanting to just walk past the store. 'Cause remember, as a child, my mom would take me to town. We would look at the things first, and then you go back into town to purchase the stuff afterwards. After you done accumulate what the prices are going to be. But unfortunately, I do hear some people complaining they cannot even have the Merry Christmas vibes that they do want to bring to their family, if not all through the year at this time.
I would say that it is challenging for a lot of people, but I would hope that recognizing that we will have Barbadians who would take the time to share with, whether it's a relative who is less able than you are, a neighbor, a workmate, a stranger, and try to make their lives and their Christmas better than that they are having. In terms, I'm just getting a little feedback, so maybe you might turn off your mic while see if that would help, because we seem to be having challenges, but we will persist and we will have a great show this evening. So I understand what you're saying, and I was on the street today, and there's a lot of traffic on the road, and many Barbadians will probably say that I'll be okay, but we need to make other people okay. And what worried me, because while I was waiting to come here, I saw about 6, 7 police, well, more than 7 vehicles, 7 motor vehicles, and there were about 5 or 6 police on motorcycles, and one guy just dashed across the cars. We were in Bay Street area, and it just reminded me that our police force is also battling with some difficult times. So I don't know, from your perspective, Janine, what are your concerns? Because we've talked about what I believe are financial challenges that families would have, but we seem to be having some other challenges which seem to perhaps that will probably impact negatively on the whole spirit of Christmas. What are your thoughts?
Yes, so in regards to that, I guess people tend to want to, if they don't have a good time throughout the year, that at least at Christmas time that they're able to give somebody something. So as you were saying, maybe crime is also going to spike because there are some guys who are not working and they turn to crime to be the way out to be able to purchase something. Unfortunately, in this country, I do hope that that doesn't have to be the case. We were hearing the other day about bodies being found as well. So I hope that this Christmas at least we can go through without the crime rate continuing to escalate as we've had all throughout the year. Maybe we can end on a positive note to be able to start 2025 differently. But I do know that persons usually around this time, you're told when you're going into town, don't wear a chain, keep your bags closed, and stuff like that, unfortunately, at this time. And I do hope that even persons could take the time also to use this cheer that we have at Christmas time. Let us start 2025 to carry it throughout the year. Let us keep this feeling, as the songwriter would have said years ago, I think it was Bumba. Um, why can't this Christmas feeling go on? So
Yes,
hopefully
yes.
that cheer will continue to take us throughout the year and crime will not increase. I do hope that.
Well, and I certainly agree with that. And the other thing is, we're talking about helping each other. And before I elaborate on the point, I just want to say that we have about 90 people who have liked the show, and I want them to do some more. I welcome the 371 persons that I'm seeing on, on watching, and I expect some more. We're gonna have John Knox talking to us in a little while. He'll come on about 8 o'clock to talk about the issue of River Bay and so on, and that's another important issue. But the point I wanted to make, Janine, is that perhaps there are some things that persons can do to instill in their children um, the importance of Christmas beyond material things. As you said, this is the opportunity, the time of the year when, if no other time, you want to have a good time. You want to be able to afford your children gifts or new clothes, spruce up your house and so on. But at the same time, I think what we need to do, and it takes me to my time as a child. I was one of 11 children. 10 of us survived. And Christmas, my father was a tailor, my mother could sew. So in terms of clothing, whatever, you may get new outfits if my father had time to make outfits for my brother. But there was something about just understanding the significance of it, and perhaps understanding that while you couldn't have everything new or what you wanted, that perhaps you needed to think in terms of appreciating what you have. Do you have any suggestions for um, families who may not have everything, in terms of how they may, I don't want to use the word salvage, but still make something and bring cheer to their children, while perhaps instilling in them certain kinds of values which get them to understand that there's more than, new clothes, new shoes, new toys, new whatever.
Yes, what I would say is having the conversation. I know sometimes as parents, we like to say, "Oh, Santa Claus is going to provide a gift this year." They also go into saying, to being that some parents have to work really hard. Then they don't get to spend as much time with their children, so they look at it as giving them that gift or whatever they request for Christmas on that wish list as the way to go and to show that that's the way that they're showing their love for them. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out for the best. I guess it comes down to this side to having our conversation with the children and allowing them to know, well, this year Christmas is not only about gifts. It's about us spending time together as a family, and about us learning. They can even do family traditions of games, being together, allowing the children to choose an activity to do around the Christmas time as well. I also think that it comes down to also, sometimes we do spoil the children too much. We think that only because that, not having that time, and that's the only way that we can go about to replenish that time as parents do. And I know a lot of parents do use that for that said reason. But as I said, coming down to the conversation, we need to have those hard conversations, because at school the children are having those hard conversations. So you as the parent to take the lead before they get to school, to have those conversations with them, and let's allow them to know the situation. And this Christmas missing a gift doesn't mean that next Christmas you're not going to have a gift or what you're requesting.
God said something just now, that at least everybody should at least have a decent meal for Christmas. And then the other comment was that, things are so expensive. And to me, that reinforces, and I suppose the best example is to use myself. As Matthew was saying, everything is so expensive. In fact, we're being warned that because of the amount of rain we've had and so on, local vegetables are going to be in much scarcer supply, etc. And I think what it says to me is that, one, I have to play my part in making sure that what God says applies, that everybody should at least have a good meal. And what I've done over the years is not only know, is to make sure that at least two or a couple families or persons that I know, while I may not be able to, I will not provide them with a meal, I will provide them with things which would contribute to them having, that good meal or whatever the case may be. And I think that is something that we have to think about when you sit down and you work out your menu of all of these things that Bajans like to have. Um, Perhaps say, you know what, I can reduce my choices by so much and share what I would have spent. And again, the other thing is that we have to remember, well, for me, Christmas changed in some instances. I remember being invited to spend Christmas with a friend overseas. And I said to the person, I can't come and visit your family because for me, Christmas, which would have been 2022, was probably going to be the last Christmas with one of my nephews. And then last year, the invitation was issued again. And I said, no, I'm sorry. This is my sister's first Christmas without that son. And so I'm saying that we need to remember that while we are celebrating and enjoying, Christmas can be made more difficult because of sadness and grief. And so I think part of bringing cheer and comfort, because it's not everybody might be into merriment because of their circumstance. I think basically look out for each other. And Sandra is saying there were no toys but church and plenty of food for Christmas. Sometimes we used to kind of make our toys. I want you to tell us though, Janine, because you could be my daughter. What is Christmas to you? And what has it been over the years? And the others can
Well,
share their thoughts with us as well in the
yeah.
comment.
Well, for me, as any other child growing up, it was about toys. It was also about family, getting to spend times with cousins that you haven't seen in a very long time, and meeting up with family members that you didn't see for a while. It was always about fun. As I've gotten older, obviously that have changed where the bills will come in. As I saw Matthew Brown saying earlier, that everything is very expensive leading up to Christmas time as well, and that is one of the challenges that we have. I mean, it's like a wedding. When you call to go to a restaurant and you say you're just coming for dinner, the price is different compared to when you say you're coming for a wedding. But for me, Christmas is a time of great feeling. That is what I was telling you earlier about having our Christmas feeling. I wish that we can really, you really feel a lot of joy and peace and feel it giving. So I wish that we can carry this throughout the year. I also see that we have our next guest in studio as well, Miss Melissa Howard.
Okay. Okay, you want to bring her in then? Because I think we,
Yes.
we should, yes. So let's welcome Melissa, and over to you, Janine, and you would introduce Melissa. Hello, Melissa. Good evening and
Hi,
welcome.
good night.
Hi,
Hi, good
good
night.
evening, good night. Welcome, Melissa Howard, to the show. She's a spokesperson on single mothers. Melissa,
Okay.
good night. How are you doing tonight?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So, our topic, we are currently talking about Christmas and how hard it can be on some persons and about having that Christmas feeling. As Maxine would have known, asked, what is Christmas for you?
Growing up, you usually get excited the night before you go to sleep. The house is in a mess. You wake up the next morning, and it's like a brand new house. New curtains. Sometimes your parents will have like different decorations on the cushions and what's not. So you wake up and you see a brand new house, and the smellers are working. You smell the ham in the oven. So the first thing I usually do is eat a ham cutter and probably drink like a sorrel. Then I will move from my home, walk up the gap to another family member, eat another ham cutter, another drink. And it was usually like that for me growing up for Christmas. And then you're off to church, enjoy the Christmas service. And then when you
Well,
come home from come home from church, you're excited to open your presents. You know, I usually open your presents probably around 12 o'clock, right before lunch, and get into the feast.
And so you were saying with single mothers, but she mentioned opening presents. My siblings don't understand me. I tell them there are 12 days of Christmas, and I open gifts on the 12th day. So I trust there's nothing in there that will be perishable because I let them stay on for 12 days. But you were mentioning, I think you mentioned, you could ask Janine, Melissa, about single mothers. Y'all want to expand on that?
You mean single mothers during Christmas?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, what are your thoughts? And
Right now, the cost of living is very high. And for a single mother having, let me say, 3 or 4 children, I can't imagine having to provide a meal for 4 individuals, let alone having to buy presents, trying to get the children to be happy and enjoy the Christmas season. So I believe right now it'll be very, very hard for single mothers during the Christmas season to try to have a happy atmosphere in the home for their children.
you know something, when I always get concerned about single mothers because they didn't get their children by themselves. And I want to appeal to men. While a woman may be a single person, you told you are not married or you're not in a relationship, please do the best by your children. I think that is something that really concerns me because as I listened to you just now, Melissa, it really dawned on me that parents need to take responsibility for their children. And that's important because I remember saying to somebody once, I'm a single woman, but I've never been a single mother because, there were two of us in the life of my son. And that has been and continues to be. And it is important that people take responsibility. And I want to thank Sharon for her kind gesture. She says they don't celebrate Christmas, but she will be donating to the Christmas drive. And while I'm saying that, I want to say a big thank you to Dale Rowe, who would have been on the show recently and who is really working on an interesting program. But over to the young ladies, I am very interested in listening to your experiences and so on and your concerns in terms of what we can do to address families that are challenged. And I think Dale's initiatives have been like that over the years, and this one certainly is. So to Sharon, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I
Melissa,
do agree.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying that I do agree with what Melissa and yourself was saying just now. Because myself had to grow up with a single mother as well, so I do know the pain that it can cause a parent. Although at that time my mother would have not, I wouldn't have known what she was going through. Only when you get older, because parents tend to just do whatever they can. You don't feel it as a person. But as you said, it for initiatives, that whole Zero is doing this drive. He wants to have 1,000 toys, I think it was. He wants about toys
Yes,
for
1,000.
children.
Yes, at
That
least.
is a really great initiative. Only if we can have, I know they do have some other persons who do stuff like that, but we need to have it more in Barbados because, unfortunately, compared to years ago, things have gotten a lot worse for persons to be able to even afford to purchase a gift for their children. And to be quite honest, if you're a parent having to choose to buy food or a gift, you would choose the food first,
Yes.
and that is the only option.
I noticed the eyes of these children. The first one, it's so like I call it starry eyed, wide eyed. I think the joy of receiving. Check this one. Is a little fella or a little. I'm trying to figure out if it looks like a girl. Oh, I see. Well, Plat's no me. The
Not me, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
I
it
think
says
it's
to
a
me,
girl.
and you really want to bring that sparkle into the eyes of the children to make them feel good to receive a gift, and it is so important. I think, in fact, I will say this: when children feel that they have been left out, that can have an impact on that child's sense of self, his or her image of who she is and how much people care about them. And it can create some long-lasting negative impacts on children. And I think people need to think about these things, you know, because at the end of the day, I think, in fact, perhaps if people do this more, I am sure the level of joy and satisfaction that you get from sharing and giving and seeing a child happy and feeling good that he or she has not been left out is that's priceless, really. You know, it really makes a difference. And this is something that I saw when I was a parent. At my son was at nursery school. The principal always said to the parents, if you were talking, let's say there was a gathering of children and you chose to speak to one or two of them, she would signal to the person, speak to all, talk to all of them, because you don't know, you know, you don't mean anything negative. You just talk to a couple, but those who weren't greeted or had a word, you know, or a smile or whatever, would probably think, so why is he or she not talking to me? You know, and I just really think that we have to, as adults, to pay more attention to our children. And this is the season for me, really, as God is saying, you want to bring joy to the children at Christmas. And I think we want to bring joy to the children in Barbados. We've gone through COVID and we're seeing the results of that. We've still been having issues with children having to study online and making the adjustment to in class, you know, in the classroom, where they might have spent a bit of time in you know, at home before a computer screen and having to adjust to socializing and so on. So I'm just saying, for me, make Christmas special in the sense that you reach out, you communicate, you engage. And we're talking about children, but what about the elderly? What's happening? What do you think, Janine, about the elderly and Melissa? Because we talk about single mothers, but then we have some of the elderly who are alone. What are your thoughts about that? And how might you want to see them be assisted in celebrating Christmas?
All right. I find that a lot of the elderly nowadays are being abandoned by their family members. For instance, I've come across a older lady close to my neighborhood. She has probably about 4 children, and right now none of them really look after her. She's without water, she's without light, and during this Christmas season, I would really want for her to have at least a meal to eat. And you find there are a lot more elderly individuals all over Barbados, basically, that have been abandoned by their family members. And hopefully, we have initiatives like the ones with the young children, where we can go out and greet them and just put a smile on their faces for the season.
You know, Janine, what are your thoughts? What can we possibly do in our communities, in our neighborhoods? Um,
Yeah,
you
we as a people need to get back to that community aspect. Like I heard of my grandmother and my mom speaking of that they did have years ago, where persons used to check up on each other. Everybody needs to know each other within the community. Nowadays, persons don't even know who's their neighbor. Unfortunately, we have lost that community spirit. So I guess it's just a sense of building that back. I do know that we have the answers to all of our issues here in Barbados, you know, because I know that we can utilize persons like the parish ambassadors.
mhm.
They are used throughout the year and then just discarded after that particular time period. Each parish ambassador provides a project each year, and that project can assist with going a long way throughout the community and continue to build community life. But after that year is over, I find that we just discard it. We can use them to assist in regards to the older persons. I know there's also the home help who also have their families as well, but maybe can if you can engage in other persons coming around to do like some Christmas carols, which I guess would be come from private entities. But just reaching out and checking on somebody, even a phone call to find out how they're feeling, to just let them feel like they are loved and that they are cherished just like anybody else. I think that a simple phone call is not too hard to do.
That,
Um,
that
go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying that is true. And as you were speaking, as you the two of you were speaking, I just thought a lot of Melissa made the point that many people are abandoned or they are alone because they might not have had a large family in the first instance, or they may have children overseas, um, or simply just neglected. But I'm thinking that we have, let's say, the minibus or the ZR associations. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody could take um, the elderly in a particular community, okay? And for a 3 hour tour, Barbados, half their tour, Barbados, on Christmas bank holiday, or on just before the end of the year or New Year's Day or whatever. I mean, I remember when Barbados used to be lit up and people would drive around the island, Bonnet's Britain's Hill. I don't know how long ago that stopped, how much of that you would have experienced. But I mean, nowadays the electricity bill is such that, and as you said, the cost of living, but people used to outdo each other in terms of decorating, and you could drive, and the roundabouts were decorated, drive from Black Rock to St. Lucy's Parish Church by the roundabout, or go south, go through the neighborhood in Bonnets and whatever, and just to get people out of the house, because it was beautiful, as you mentioned, window shopping in Bridgetown. And I believe that in recent years we have had Christmas trees erected in the area of Independence Square and so on. I think it's the Commonwealth Association that does that. And I think that simple things, an hour or two, somebody who drives or owns a minibus may say, look, I'm going to make this available tonight, because after a certain time, many of them do not run, or just take it off the route for an hour or two, and take people on a nice tour to get them out of the house. I just believe that, as Sandra said, well, I hope it has not gone. I hope that love for each other perhaps is not as evident as it was before. But I believe that even in the heights and terraces, well, if I could share the example of the neighborhood we're in nowadays with cameras, we look out for each other. But unfortunately, oftentimes you have to be sharing pictures of persons trying to break in your house, which is an unfortunate reality. Now, that is the kind of thing that, we have seen around. And there's still some people who decorate their houses like that. I'm not sure if they will do it this year, but going to Fitz Village, there's usually a house there that's very well decorated. There've been some in different areas of the island. But what do you think of that, and who might be who might you recommend to organize something? In fact, I throw this out to the members of the loyal opposition. Tell us what you can do or what you're willing to do to bring some cheer either to children. We've heard what the Aurora is doing in terms of toys on Christmas morning, I think it is. But we Christmas, as I said, it's a season. It's more than the Christmas day and the bank holiday for those of us who celebrate 12 days of Christmas. What are some of the things that we can do to end the year or to begin the year to bring some cheer to persons who really can do with a bit of happiness and pleasure and positivity in their lives?
You see, we saw God saying that next year that they would like to do something to help the elderly. So you see, we already have one of many people trying to assist where they can, which is really good.
Yes, I think that is good. So what and I read something earlier, and I'm glad that he's thinking, he or she, sorry, because I'm saying God and I'm not sure. I was thinking it's male, but I may be wrong. And God indicated that life was not that easy growing up. And I will suggest to you that perhaps in sharing something like this, sharing something like this would perhaps help to bring some kind of pleasure in a situation where you had not. Now, this is cherry tree branch or Christmas tree. That sounds very familiar. Um, gifts, Sharon, were also um, not typical or something very basic, but whatever it was, you did it with anticipation. I was listening to VOB yesterday or day before, and the question that was asked was, what was one of the thing that you hated doing at Christmas? And my answer to that, as I listened to the program, my answer was waiting. Waiting for Christmas to come. But no, with a blink of an eye, it is here. And in fact, to me, Christmas seems to be the shortest day of the year. It just goes. But I think, as you said, we need to get back that love and feeling, and a way to do it is to express love and care for somebody else. And it may be somebody in your neighborhood who you pass, or maybe somebody in your own neighborhood, or old schoolmate, whatever the case may be. But that is something. And Melissa, I don't know, in terms of, because you mentioned, is there, when you talked about single mothers, is there a program or something that you're involved in that I was just trying to understand what is involved in working with or thinking about the needs of single mothers who may not have the support, the requisite support to support one or two or even three children, and so on.
No, it's not a program per se, but I've come across many recently
Okay.
who the father is not in the picture. So a lot of them are just burdened with all the responsibilities of raising children, providing for the children. Every now and then the father may provide financially, but it's not a consistent thing. Um, you had a situation where there's a lady, she has 4 children, and the check that she received from the welfare department was only $246. I can't imagine, and that's for a month. I can't imagine how $246 could sustain a family of 5 for on a monthly basis. And she was trying to get rent, a house to rent, sorry, and they only assist up to $800. And in this climate nowadays, you will only find like a 1 bedroom home available for $800.
Well, and this, you see, the challenge really and truly is how much can you provide in terms of assistance, and this is the unfortunate reality. I remember talking to a woman who would call me, because I've been involved in the credit union for many years, 4 decades really, since 1983. And the person was working, I think, at a supermarket, and her difficulty was being able to afford to shop. But of course you have a job, so you don't qualify for welfare grants, because I don't think she was more elderly than a young mother. It is a tough one, and really and truly, that's why it is important that government steps in, and perhaps in cases you may have to make greater allowances, because the question is, how do you balance giving and addressing the needs of a family of a certain size, against the inability, I mean, if it is not enough, the consequences of that. Because what happens then, how do you survive? And oh no, they're talking about the lighting ceremony, so it is a difficult one. And this is where um individuals, government has to play its part, and it has to perhaps look at how it can achieve greater efficiencies in some areas where there's wastage, perhaps, and assist more. But at the same time, there's a limit to how far that can go. And therefore, that's why it's important that we as citizens also try to play our part. We cannot replace government. Government has, because if you have to address the issues of poverty in a society, etc. Nina is saying you value individuals over money, family, friends, value neighbors. And these things are important, but I also want to, we have, about 7 more minutes before we are scheduled to welcome Mr. Knox. But I also want to speak about the whole issue of what I consider the materialism, the overemphasis on consumption. And for some people, it is consumption at all costs. So they will take a credit card and go shopping, and max it out, as they say. You take it to the limit, and then Christmas, that short period you enjoy, but then you're faced with the bill, servicing that credit card bill. And let me ask the two of you a question. Tell me what, and this is to the audience as well. What is the annual interest rate that you would probably pay on a credit card?
Honestly, I don't know, because I don't own a credit card.
Very good. But you need to know, though.
Yeah, I try to do everything with my own cash and not have,
But there's a benefit to credit. But let me ask, not Melissa. Melissa just answered.
Yes.
See, old age.
It's okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have a credit card either. I don't have one.
That is a good thing. The annual interest rate on credit cards would be somewhere around 22-23%. Let me explain to you very quickly what that means, and we can talk about this in another program. If you use a credit card and you spent $100, okay, and you pay that interest of, and like the annual interest, 23 means that you're paying interest of $23 in that year, on a year, and now contrast that with if you had that $100 in the bank getting savings. Right now you're getting less than 1%. In other words, the annual the rate would be less than $1 on your $100 in interest. So think of the gap between there, and what that meant, because at the end of the day, one of the things, and what makes it very expensive. Now, if you can pay off the card very quickly and you don't incur the interest charge, at the maximum amount, or shorter period, that's one thing. But a lot of people do this and they tell you, oh, I only paying the minimum. So in other words, they might have spent $3,000 or $4,000 and they're going to pay $30 or $40 or whatever. Now, once you're paying, the issuer of that credit card doesn't mind, because the longer you take to pay, the more interest you are incurring, and so you don't get to pay down the principal. So one of the things I say to people, do not just go crazy spending money that you do not have. So I think your approach is pretty good. Credit is useful, but that's another presentation one of these days. Maybe I'll have a conversation with Marcia about talking about managing credit, how you make credit work for you when it is bad, when it is dangerous, when it downright damages your financial situation, etc. Sharon is saying it was never sensible enough to own a credit card. All I would tell you is that if you have a credit card, the banks would not like you if you do what a lot of people do, but it is to your benefit. Sometimes if you travel and they tell you have to do a reservation at a hotel to book a hotel or something, you use a card. You either if you use the card when you come home, you go and pay it off right away, so you incur little or no interest within the 30 days. But people run into trouble. They have to pay late fees. They pay minimum, the minimum amount that the bank says, and they figure that I can manage that, but then the interest is accumulating and so on. So one these days we can talk personal financial management, but I think that is something, and I raise that because I know the temptation is there, as you mentioned, with people who have children. And children, when they look at you and they say, well, Johnny got this and Mary got that in my class, or they say that their mother or father promised them this, and why can't I? So the parent may say, look, I love my child and I want to do this, but then what you do is you go and put yourself in serious debt, making it worse. So, you know, so that is true, as Nina 512 is saying, holidays are capitalistic and money must be spent. Money must be spent, but money must not be spent foolishly. That's how I look at it. And I have a saying, Christmas never asked me for anything. People ask, what are you going to do for Christmas? I said, Christmas didn't ask me for anything, and in all seriousness, you have to sit down and look at how you balance the pleasure of the season, the couple days that you celebrate, and the hardships that come. They tell you that paydays in January are the longest ones to
Yeah,
come.
yeah.
you know. But I think that perhaps, Janine, is there anything you or Melissa want to say before we prepare for our next guest? We will get a signal that he's with us. What are anything else you want to talk about this Christmas and what it should be and what it could be and what you don't want it to be? Because that's something that we can think about too.
Yeah, most importantly, a creamless Christmas. I saw someone saying earlier that they couldn't sit down going to the front house until Christmas morning, and that is my experience as well.
I, oh, so it still happens among the young.
Yeah,
No, but that's in fact. But the thing about that, though, as we prepare for John, Mr. Knox to join us, the thing about that, it was like there were seasons, there were things to look forward to. I can still smell the smells of Christmas. It was golden apples and English apples, as we call them, bananas and baking and polish and varnish that you use on furniture and the covering for the floor. And there was something that we did. Y'all will probably laugh at this. We used to have to wash bottles, drink bottles, because you didn't get soft drinks like you drink them all year round. You would get, that was an occasional thing. So you would have your soft drink bottle. So by sitting there in your yard for weeks and months, then you wash them and you wait for the drink truck to come down. And as Judy said, you scrub the house with whitehead. Anybody knows whitehead bush? I saw some the other day, and I was asking a young person if they knew it.
No, I
So,
have no idea what it is. What
okay,
is it?
what I will do, I will promise to see if I can find a photograph of it. In fact, there was a house of somebody I knew had some growing, and I'll see if I find some. In fact, this is an invitation to our loyal opposition. For anybody who has whitehead bush growing anywhere near you, or you see it in your moving around, please take a photograph so we can share it with Barbadians. It's a short plant with some little white flower type things, a very like a little bud more than a flower that's open, and it was supposed to have a kind of soapy effect, I think. Um, you know, um, Anybody know what EC is?
No.
That was something like how we have bleach. EC was, I don't even know if it was EC or if it was spelled out, but I must ask one of the people what somebody could tell us as well. But that was something you used to clean, you used to get it, you would buy it by the bottle or there it is.
Ah,
I think that is it right there. That looks like it, like the little white. But they look, yeah, that looks kind of like it to me, and it if it's and it had, I thought it had a bit more leaves on it, but we will, that might be one that's fully flowered. But those were the things. Okay, go to the quarry for marl, and we had our versions of snow. um People, all I can think about was that people would dust up their feet putting this marl around. But you, you hear some interesting stories. But I think the good thing is it has brought a laugh to us. Janine, I will tell you, I'll be the teacher here. I'm hearing my voice a lot, so in a little while
no, I'm enjoying your stories actually because the only EC know about is the money. So you know it like something tonight.
The currency.
You see, I must, but you must ask your mom, your your grandmother,
I say somebody said EC was our first Clorox.
exactly. It was like a bleach,
Oh.
Clorox really is, I guess, a brand, a
Mhm.
brand, because we tend because it's a bleach, and we tend to, the predominant brands tend to, the product ends up being called that. So we would talk about Clorox. Okay, so when you clean the pig pen, I think you would have used that again as well.
So which
Uh,
mean that was a really good brand then. So when we have them, we water down.
Lemuel is
Literally.
asking. Lemuel is asking about boiling the ham. Your parents will probably tell about the hams that used to have, they were wrapped and they had some kind of wax or whatever on the outside, and
Mhm.
they weren't chilled or frozen, so you can hang them in the rafters of wherever for what, and then you took this off. It was like some kind of tar or something on the outside, and these things were soaked because they were very salt and boiled. But and when, as you say, when the ham was boiled, you could smell it through. In fact, one of the things I realized, you don't smell people cooking like we used to when I was a child. Or they must, I don't know if they cook differently, or the food doesn't have the same scent. Or maybe some of us are living too, but no, I live pretty near to my neighbors, so it isn't as
Yeah,
though there's a big distance. There's some things that have changed.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. I hear my grandmom saying the same thing. Maybe because you guys need to use a lot more herbs from the garden. I know people are using the herbs from the package. Maybe
and
that
try,
could be the reason. Look,
maybe.
Melissa, we're not to buy. See, some God is saying he's 52. I
Mr.
never heard
God. Oh,
about
it's
ECPC.
Mr.
Yeah,
God.
so
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
You never heard about, you see? No,
so we
probably,
didn't feel too
probably,
bad.
probably in his time he was getting Clorox and whichever other brands of bleach.
Well, I always wonder, what did y'all do to store the meats without
Um,
refrigerators?
well, I think the old people used to, but they used to corn it and whatever else. People shopped, but people use less meat. Let me put it that way. That's why Christmas was. So, for example, or you would have things like pork and so on. You would buy, like, if you go in the market and you buy it, and you probably buy enough to use on a Sunday, because certain things were Sunday food, right? So things like chicken and so on. In the week you get fish, and if you got a lot of um and I'm the youngest of I'm not the youngest, I'm the youngest girl, so I am at the tail end. I have two younger brothers, so the older ones, but part of it was that you bought less, so things were fresh, or you often probably, so if you had chicken, it might have been a chicken out of your yard. So you slaughtered the chicken. Can either one of you kill a chicken?
Yes, I had those days. Yeah,
Yeah, I had those too.
yeah,
Melissa had the, what about you, Janine?
yeah.
Not
I
you.
live in the country, so I had
Not
those days
me.
of killing chickens when I was younger. Yeah,
Not me.
No,
put
no,
them
no.
in hot
But I tell you
water.
the truth, if I had to do it now, I would do it. If you go outside, because I saw a video where this young Kenyan, she was here, she's one of these bloggers, running to catch a, well, she called them free range. I said to myself, those chickens in Barbados are not free range chickens, they're wild chickens. But if you want, you can come and go into my mango tree now. You can probably catch about 5 of them, because they sleep in the tree at night and make noise at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. But no, but this was a thing that we did. So to your question, um, and you can signal when our next guest is in, because I suspect we're past 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Um, People bought less, in terms that they bought what they needed to use, but there was less consumption of purchased meat. So, for example, you would have a neighborhood butcher or whatever. You go in the market, Cheapside or whichever market, Cheapside if you were into Bridgetown, and you bought fresh meat, but there wasn't and then you probably came home and prepared it for like for Sunday or whatever. You buy it the Saturday and you season it and whatever, um, you know, and so those were the leaners, referring to the hams that, and somebody was saying to me that you can still find that kind of ham on the market. I am not sure. I think somebody mentioned that they had seen some in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, But that is right. You had to soak it and get that salt out, and then you had to cook it for a long time. But what we have now are pre-cooked hams. So what the method of preservation is probably different, you know. All right. So I hope that those memories of Christmas will bring cheer. And for some people, maybe a tinge of sadness, but let's hope that we can balance that by bringing cheer to somebody else. Your thoughts?
Yeah, most definitely. As we come up on our time, we do really want to thank Melissa for coming on. Although we think about times that people can have it hard at Christmas, we also were able to dive into memories and also you see people. This is what we can do. Have some person that is older and listen to some older Christmas stories. All of this,
See,
this is about tradition as well. So you may not get a gift, but you can learn something from somebody as Melissa and myself did tonight. Melissa, what are your closing remarks?
Yeah, I actually enjoy listening to older folks and the talking about things that happened in the past. If we don't know where we come from, we will never know where we're going. So learning from the older individuals is always a good thing, and it helps us to embrace our culture.
great.
Something that
Yes.
we could do more often.
Nigel is saying that old time food was natural. Today's food is highly processed and has no taste. To some extent, that applies. I mean, because you have certain memories of certain tastes, and then you say, "Oh, I haven't had that," but then you realize you did. You know.
Mhm.
Well, Janine, if our next guest is there, I will let you do some introductions. And Melissa, I thank you so much.
Yeah.
You said that you live in the country. Are there any golden apple trees anywhere near you?
Yes, there are.
I am on a hunt for golden apples. So if you see any, I'm not saying to steal anybody's apples.
If I get any, I will bring some for you.
Thank you very much. Those
You're
are the
welcome.
things that we used to look forward to at this time of the year. But they seem to be few and far between, at least local ones.
Mhm. Well, thanks again, Melissa. Thank you so much for coming on to the Mercy Week show. Did not this was your first time, and we hope to see you again. And we hope that you did have a wonderful time here tonight with us.
Thank you. The pleasure was mine. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good night.
Have a good one.
Okay, everyone. Our next guest, as we move along, would be John Knox and Mr. Paul Gibson as well, as they talk about River Bear for sale. Is it no longer going to be a picnic spot or a national park? Um, we're gonna get our guests into the studio. Welcome to the Marcy Week Show, Mr. Knox. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty well, thanks. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure
Good
to
night
have you
to
here tonight.
John. I knew
Good
John when
night.
he was a schoolboy, but he might not remember that. But that's
Oh no.
and your two sisters.
Yeah. That's right. I have two sisters. That's correct.
Awesome.
I went to Harrison College and they went to Queens.
Right. I knew them at school.
I guess you
Jane
went to
and
Queens too.
I was trying. Yeah, I was trying to remember your
Kathy.
second sister's name. Ca-
Kathy.
Kathy. Yes. Right. Right. Okay.
Kathleen or
So
Kathy. Yeah.
Kathleen. Yes. Uh-huh. So is Paul in as well? Otherwise, okay. And you're muted.
Oh, oh,
Yes.
sorry. Right. So I was saying, right, Paul is not in it yet. So John, you can go right ahead and start with your presentation.
All right. I was trying to share the my screen, but I'm not sure if it's working or not. Um, according to this, it's working, but let me see. Go here. I see it. You're in the show. Edit more. Stop screen. No, I don't want to stop the screen. Anyway, the point that I would be trying to make is that it's private property, and an owner of private property can do with it as he pleases. But it's also in the national park, or what an area that is designated as the national park, Scotland District National Park. So there will be restrictions on what can be done and can't be done. Um, there's a lot of history up there. All along the coast, there's evidence that Druitt, I think Druitt did the work in the early 1990s of Amerindian settlement. So all along that coast, there's you'll find like maybe some conch shells or conch tools or bit shards of pottery, clay pottery, and so on. So I think the Scotland District National Park extends up to Archers Bay and encompasses the Scotland District proper and goes as far south as St. Mark's Church, if memory serves me correct. I think that was designated a national park in 1990, somewhere around 1994, 93, just before they decided to put Greenland, the dump, into the national park. Richard Goddard had a field day with that. It was known as putting the dump into the. Who ever heard of putting a national dump in the national park? So there's a lot of history to do with with the national park. People have made noise before. So I think the basic principle though is that a private landowner, if he can find someone who is willing to pay 2.7 million US dollars to purchase land that is in a protected area, good for him. But the person who purchases it has to understand that it's in a protected area and that he will have to, or she, or they will have to observe the protections that are attached to the area. I'm trying to share this screen to show you just how many sites there are that Druitt found along the coast. The National Trust is trying to have a series of hikes along the Indian Trail. Most of them seem to have lived in or at least most of the sites seem to be along the north coast, and you'll find there's an old route that the hikers know very well up along the escarpment that leads down to Pori Spring, as far south as Pori Spring. So it looks as though they lived up there. They would have fished, they would have eaten snails, whatever. Birds, a lot of migratory birds would stop there at the on what we call the shooting pans, but they would have shot them probably with bow and arrow. So probably got food there, but in times of in times when it was very dry, they had to find water. So they went inland to find the springs. Up at Spring Head, you will find there's a cave with petroglyphs. That's the only known cave in Barbados that has those petroglyphs. You'll find them in, I think, St. Vincent, those petroglyphs in St. Vincent as well. So the evidence is there that there was a presence, an Amerindian presence. There's a cave that early settlers knew as Indian Castle, just above a mile and a quarter. That's a beautiful cave. But this is about River Bay, and River Bay is really in the national park. It's private property. The government owns, I think, where the beach facility is. So the National Trust has had hikes along and had a hike. They're looking to start hikes along the trail and do sections. So it's come up. So those circles are examples of where Druitt found evidence of Amerindian settlements all along here. This is River Bay around here. The National Trust did a hike, I think in July 28th, from River Bay to Animal Flower Cave and back. We passed the place where we picked up or looked at, because you're not allowed to move. You're not allowed to move. There's a preservation of relics at. and Antiquities from 2011. So you're not supposed to, it's against the law to disturb or remove, let's say remove any relics. You can't even use a metal detector these days without getting permission. Um, Probably some people do what. And also in digging, if you go digging, you have to have permission from the I think it is the Barbados Museum and Historical Society, because all those relics and so on need to be protected. So people just go and start construction projects with as they please, but there is an act which will control, which they should basically observe and cross their T's, dot their I's, and get their permissions before they go digging wild. But this, as I say, lots of sites along this coast. National Trust is trying to basically to let me see if I can do this. Oh boy, let me go back. National Trust is trying to get to do sections of this old Indian Trail right back to Quarry Spring. We've got caves along there, are quite nice, but as you can see in the River Bay area and up here, so down here, there's lots of old sites. So if you're gonna sell the land, just be aware that there are historic sites along here. People may not realize it, and work this out. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, before we go on, just want to welcome Mr. Paul Gibson to the show once again, as he will also be making some comments in regards to this conversation that we are having. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing quite well. A busy day, but it's Friday. We relax and enjoy our families and enjoy the evening. But I'm doing well.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Awesome. So in regards to what John was saying, do you have any points to make towards that?
Yeah, I really treasure what Richard communicated this evening regarding in respect to the historicity and the everything associated with River Bay. I don't think that even though we're getting all these loans for the environment and the climate change and so on, sometimes I don't think that people remember that people come to Barbados for treasures like River Bay. I remember as a boy, and many of us, there are thousands of Barbadians over the years that would have gone to camp at River Bay. I don't know if Richard, if you were one of those, with Paul Hynam and the Militant Boys and so on.
John, not Richard. John.
Sorry, John. My apologies, John.
No, I was talking with Richard Goddard, so you've got Richard.
Right. But you know that there have been thousands of Barbadians would have set up camp sites and tents, and would have spent sometimes between 6 to 8 weeks at a camp called ISCF camp, right there at that spot. And it was a very transformational time when parents would send their kids to camp at River Bay, and we would be in tents. They would be cooking. We would go on trails. We would swim. There would be a lot of Bible studies, a lot of singing, memories, and so on. And getting very creative in the open environment. This area, I remember, was an area where year after year we would go and camp out. And I'm happy that at least Mr. Bino purchased it, and it is in the possession of a Barbadian. My concern, John, is that, and Maxine, is that we have a situation where some of the greatest treasures of Barbados are finding their way into the hands of persons that do not remember the history of Barbados. We've lost Six Men's. The Teacup and Saucer has gone. We've sold off Whole Town. We've sold off Oystins. We know that the Bay Street is going to be reconfigured, but we know that number 10 and the White House are relics. I mean, the places that people want to go and see with a lot of history, but we are selling ours. And I don't think that persons are remembering that people visit Barbados for these treasures, to enjoy an island, and an island that has history, has rich history, that has your artifacts and so on. And I think that we are missing the boat when we are taking some of our greatest treasures and just dispose of them like this. Now, a private owner wanting to sell his property for 2.7 million US dollars, that's his right. And I pray and hope that he gets the sale. But I'm hoping that the government considers preserving at least this particular location. Back in the day, I remember as a boy, again, my grandmother putting buses together, and everybody would go to River Bay, with the salt butter, baked bread and fried this, and it was a very exciting time. But there were a lot of memories that were created in this River Bay space for Barbadians, and I'm getting a little concerned that very soon, if we don't be careful, Barbados will not look anything like what we knew in the past, and we have no memories, and everything that we know to be beautiful and natural will become a concrete jungle. I'm saying that we need to manage this very, very carefully.
I have a question, Janine, for John, because you just highlighted something that I was not even aware that there were so many sites. I mean, you showed a trail of historic sites. What and you reminded Barbadians that it is part of the national park. Given what you've shared about the existence of these sites and so on, what would be your preference if you had to make a recommendation for this area? Because I have some thoughts, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Paul suggested something, and I was wondering what your thoughts are before I share my thinking on what might be some of the possible options that can be contemplated, that ought to be contemplated. What are your thoughts?
When the National Trust was scouting the, if you can share the screen, we got to be careful about what is the property in question. So if you can share the screen, I think, I don't know if this is the correct one. This is what I received on WhatsApp. So you should look at that first. Okay. But when the National Trust was scouting the trail and so on, myself and a couple of other people, when we got down there were many people coming back from hiking along the coast. They'd gone. Most of the ones we saw there had gone to the south and had gone towards Cove Bay area and come back. They parked at River Bay, gone hiking. So it is a pleasurable recreational spot for many Barbadians. When I used to hike a lot in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, River Bay was one of the places that we started from, National Trust and so on. So, okay, that's only Sunday. Do you need to have this area used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Or should you just leave it alone and let people go and enjoy it as it is? When I was there scouting, I also met a fisherman. He'd been fishing somewhere in this area, right? I don't know where exactly. He was riding his bicycle coming back, and he had a string of maybe 6 or so porgies. So who needs the supermarket when you can fish right here?
Yes.
So people in the area do fish and enjoy fresh fish. When I got here at this point, look down, you could see the fish, large fish, moving around down here. So it's really a lovely natural environment. You can see here, this water course here coming in, this comes from up at Spring Hall. This also comes from Spring Hall. And it's called Spring Hall. There's also a place called Spring Garden that delivers, that where the water actually comes up from the earth and comes down towards River Bay. But it only comes up from the earth if there's rainfall above it, or at least upstream.
Upstream, yes.
So yeah, so there's no so it's just to me it's just a natural place. From what I understand from this diagram, is that this part in here is owned by government, and this part is owned by Mr. Bino. And as I said before, if Mr. Bino can get someone to pay $2.7 million US for this, please observe the requirements of the. I hope that the purchaser will observe the requirements
and the covenants
of the land being in the national park, right?
Yes.
So that's, to me, it's just a natural thing. Yeah.
I like that. I mean, if as you were speaking, I wrote down the price, and then I said, what are some of the options? And I sent Dave 2 little videos. Some weeks ago, I went down there with some friends visiting because, like all of us, we either went there picnicking or whatever. And it so happened that when we left this part of the island, it was obviously raining in the north. And it was for the first time. This is a picture of it. It's actually a little video that I had. And this is as you were exiting to go up away from the cliff on the other side, going away. And this was like a river. I said these are Barbadians visiting from overseas. And I said to them, this was the first time that I'd seen water come in at high tide or whatever. But this was the first time I saw water coming the other way, coming from the shore onto the sea. And it was an interesting phenomenon because there was the clear water from the sea and then this muddy water, so to speak, joining, merging. And so this was like the river course, this coming down and then getting into the other. In fact, you could see it, it was moving. And it was interesting to see that. Now, my thing is like you and your presentation reminded me that this is something that should be preserved in its current, in its original state. And I would suggest that the government can seek to purchase it because at the end of the day, it would almost be to me, it would be a travesty to change the whatever planning permissions or whatever that you now this wasn't here. So when it reached, you could see beyond the space there was you could see the blue water and then this gray water, as I call it, went into the sea rather than the sea because because of the tides coming the other way. And I just thought, it was something to watch. I've been on the cliff like everybody else, and I'm thinking the government can purchase it, or there are many what I call high net worth persons, including our national hero, who can come together and gift it to Barbados. Some of them may be able to get tax benefits, for philanthropic giving. I don't know, depending on the jurisdiction they come from. I think it really should, because you're either going to do that and then change the rules to give somebody permission to put something that he or she or that family or small group of people might enjoy. And I think it's in the national park, as you said, John. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that suggestion. You are Paul. What do you think about somebody gifting or some people coming together to gift this to the people? And I'll make this one point. I remember there was a comment made, and I don't have permission to call his name, but a Barbadian who was very much interested in these things, who said, the people who enjoy Barbados should perhaps contribute to preserving the things that make Barbados enjoyable for them.
Yes, I personally, I agree with you, Maxine. The two suggestions you made are solid. in respect to the discussion you had regarding the river, that river, I've seen on 3 or 4 different occasions that river come down at a camp, in the same camps I was telling you about, and we were on the other side near the bluff, near the cliff, and you really, once that river comes down, as you know, John, you really can't get back across. You have to wait until it comes down. It was one of the most exciting camps you could ever go to, because you'll be sleeping in the middle of the night and wake up trying to get all your stuff together because the river is coming down, and you're trying to get back across before it gets too wide, you know. But yes, somebody should really consider preserving things like River Bay. I hope that somebody can gift it to Barbados, as you suggested, Maxine. I think it's a brilliant idea, and allow our children and our children's children and their great grandchildren to enjoy this natural Barbados. I remember my mother-in-law going to Hawaii once. She said all her life she wanted to go to Hawaii because of the rivers and the tall mountains and the greenery and the all the music and so on, you know. And I remember she came back to Barbados and said, you know what, I'm so sorry I went to Hawaii now, because when she went to Waikiki Beach, what she saw was nothing like what is in the pictures and so on. It was just concrete, hotels, tourists, and nothing natural. And we're getting to a stage in Barbados where, yes, tourism is our bread and butter, but we need to be able to leave, and I'm going to say this again, to leave something like this treasure for Barbadians to enjoy. The suggestion to have it purchased by someone that would preserve it is a brilliant idea, and I'm just saying that the government itself should consider taking over the property, of course, for market value. I hope that Mr. Bino gets his market value, but I do not think that we should let this one go, because we're letting too many of our beautiful parts of Barbados go, and a few families are enjoying it, and the rest of us are excluded. And this, I look at this picture here on the screen, and I'm just fascinated by how beautiful River Bay is. But we should really preserve this treasure.
I just wanted to say I agree. And before we move on, Paul, you were saying earlier that if these things continue to happen, that Barbados can turn into a concrete jungle, and that scared me for a bit, because I know that when persons come to Barbados, they're coming to enjoy the sand, the sea, and a different, more free atmosphere instead of what they will get in England or in America.
Yeah.
So what can you say to the government to allow them to know we cannot allow this to happen to our country?
Well, I think that since we are, I mean, and John, I don't know what your thoughts are, but since we are getting all of these loans, these international loans for climate change and for the environment, and so we seem to have a lot of money in this space, right? Much more than 2.7 million US dollars. But I'm thinking that we need to begin to do a master plan for Barbados, where we begin to ask ourselves, what do we want to preserve and what do we want to let go? If we begin to cover all of our limestone, for example, with concrete, there will come a time when, in a water scarce country like Barbados, our aquifers will be compromised, even from all the coverage. And you know this to be true, John, because we are a limestone country. Limestone needs water to survive, and the aquifers need that. And so there's an inextricable association between the coverage of our land and our topography with concrete and having it preserved. These are all things that need to be in a larger, wider discussion about how we want Barbados to look in 30 to 50 years and beyond.
I like that suggestion. Since you're basically getting all these loans for greening the economy and climate change and all that, why not invest in preserving what is there and stop? Don't build any. Oh, by the way, do you all realize that there is a hotel near to River Bay? If you can share my screen, I'll show you where it is.
Mm-hmm.
It was built in the 1960s. It's known as North Point Surf Resort. Mm-hmm. It's all derelict now. So if are you seeing my screen?
Yes, yes, we are.
Wasn't that a
Okay.
military base at
So
one
if you
point
don't-
too? Yes.
no, the military base is on the other side.
Other side,
This
right?
this is this is River Bay here. So if I were to zoom in a little bit here, a lot of people don't realize this is North Point Surf Resort. There is an
Years
absolutely
ago.
beautiful. Sorry.
I say years ago, it was something to see.
Yes, yes,
Yes. There's a beautiful beach here with concrete steps. Maybe they're not so safe now, but concrete steps going down to it. And there is an Olympic-sized swimming pool in here.
yeah.
This is what's left of the hotel. It's all derelict. There's an Olympic-sized swimming pool in here. I remember when I was a boy at school that the house swimming sports at the for the houses were held down here. So we all came down by bus. And I remember that as you can see that pool is enormous. And
Massive,
this
yes.
this area here is where the dive boards are. This is the pool here. A lot of water collects now, so down here that is the water that has collected. But there's actually a lot. To me, if you were going to do anything down there, like building or anything with concrete, I think that might be one of the projects that you know you could look at doing, trying to make a restore something down
Yes.
here. The beach is absolutely beautiful. The sea is obviously dangerous, so you know people might drown. But as you can see from River Bay, if you walk along the coast, right, all along here, which is what we did,
Yes. We know
there
along there.
the Arawak sites. We walked the Animal Cave. So the next hike we'll probably don't know exactly when. It's probably from Animal Flora Cave. Right along this is probably one of the most amazing coastlines
Pictures.
in
Yes.
part of the coastline here.
Correct.
All along here. So as you can see here are two houses that are pretty recent vintage. There's Archer's Bay here. Archer's Bay is really nice. Really nice too. So lots of this is I don't think you want to. I mean, the thing that really shocked me was that people could consider putting a wind farm at one time along here. So I don't know what the plans are to develop here, or if there are any plans. It doesn't sound from reading the paper as though Mr. Bino actually has a purchaser. But to me, it would be wrong to mess up something as pristine as this. Right around here into this is landlocked along here, and this is Cove Bay here.
Yes.
Did you know that in the 40s there was a fishing fleet? There was a fishing fleet that operated from in here. One of the hikers told me he remembers under these trees here was where the boats, their sailing boats, were hauled up, literally up a hill, and all the work was done on them. So the boats would come in, drop their ballast, and beach be drawn up the hill, worked on, back into the sea, out, get their ballast, and go, and they would basically be anchored in here during the thing. Again, a lot of history is down there. When you come along here, you get to Pico, Tenerife, and so on. It's really, really a nice walk along there. So I think to disrupt, to change this into something that isn't now is almost criminal. These are these are solar panels. You can see this stick out. Okay, they're not honey posts, but I mean they're ugly. This is the Animal Flower Cave is really something worth visiting. You have fishermen. I went down there one morning early, and there were people out fishing on these rocks. A guy I met in the hikes, I think an old fella told me that there's a place down here on the map. It appears as Golding's Green. I think this is it here down here. We haven't been on there as yet, but this person, I think he lived around here. Unfortunately, it's just passed. He was telling us about the what you call the green or the flat. So I suspect that down here was also a fishing point as well too.
Right.
They're so there's so much history and so on there that it is almost criminal to even think of developing. Selling, I mean, hey, if somebody enjoys the place and as it is and wants to buy, I don't have a problem. I mean, who can say anything? That's what our constitution protects, the right for private property. So right to have private property. So you can't stop that, but at least you can make sure that you try and preserve what you have and don't throw it away unnecessarily.
I wanted to ask a question, Maxine and John. What of the Relic Act? I saw that they went to Bridgetown and they completely reconfigured the part across the way from the Carinage, and that was a site known to have be a burial ground for African slaves and so on historically. I have not heard anyone talking about the preservation of that particular area. Have you? I don't know. I'm not hearing anything. I'm seeing a lot of building, a lot of digging and so on going on there, but I've not heard that the bodies have been lifted, the bodies have been placed or preserved in another location. So my question is, if that's what's happening I'm assuming. I'm asking the question. I don't know. But
I would have to research. I know that there were concerns expressed about by people who are into archaeological digs and so on, that they have to preserve those things. Now you have to look at the legislation.
Yes.
And I know in terms of the preservation, because outside of burial grounds or whatever, there's some other historic aspects to the area. Now, that is a concern. In fact, I actually sent Dave another little video which somebody had shared of Archer's Bay, because I'm thinking that and John mentioned hike. So I would have to research. Paul, I couldn't offer an immediate response, but I would have to look and see.
We need to investigate that very carefully.
National antiquities and that kind of thing, what it says. But I am just thinking that as part of that preservation, people are always saying that they're looking for additional things to do when they come to Barbados. We have Barbadians, a number of Barbadians are growing into hiking and so on. So beyond the locals, I also see it as an activity where, let's say you have Barbadians who are hiking enthusiasts, can create an opportunity to create a business.
Yes.
But in terms of preserving that and acquiring, because I don't believe that it should necessarily be. I mean, compulsory acquisition doesn't mean that you don't pay a good market value or whatever.
Correct.
But I think if anybody acquiring that, unless government is going to go against a lot of what we're supposed to believe in this country, to allow somebody to go and construct some, I was going to use the exact word, to the detriment of Barbados and visitors to Barbados. You can actually generate. You go to Farley Hill. Farley Hill is one of the places I love to go and on the up, by the gazebo and look over the coast and so on, and on a clear day take photographs. I mean, I could go into my phone and produce pictures because that's something I enjoy doing. But we pay to go into Farley Hill.
Yes.
And so and that helps. I trust to defray the cost of keeping it, in a good state, because if they've got the picture, he can show you from what the person shared what's happening at Archer's Bay. The rain, they've got the bush, and so I'm saying that this can be done. It can be done in a way. Look at what happened to East Coast. What do you call it?
Barclays Park?
Barclays Park.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yes.
So here's, I mean, you have benches and whatever, but it needs maintenance, and
Yes.
and there's a point at which I suppose where people come and you may facilitate parking or whatever, and people, I think Barbadians are orderly, people who would pay, and
Yes.
that would help to defray the cost. But I believe that this is a critical area to preserve. It's part of our patrimony, and we need to preserve it. You know.
Indeed. Indeed.
Let me ask
How the
you,
national,
been there? Sorry, John, you were saying something?
I was saying how the National Trust is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The first Indian Trail hike that we had, the National Trust basically marketed it, had T-shirts and so on, and I think there was a fee. There was a fee to come on the hike. I think it was something like close to 100, if not more, people came. Really, it was too big for the for what we had what we had planned. But it was, I mean, everybody I think enjoyed themselves.
Yes.
Some people wanted to go further, but
Yes.
we weren't able to because it was really not meant for a really strenuous hike. It was meant for older people, you know, that were able to, you know,
leisurely
go along leisurely and so on. So just what you're saying is what the National Trust is trying to do. Organize hikes, and there are other people who do that as well. There are actually people who do that on their own as well. They will actually advertise on the net, and they basically say we'll take you around. But the trust is basically
tourism product as well, isn't it, John?
Right. So the trust is as I understand it, it's trying to make it so that there's a lot of history. The leaders can actually are trained well enough that they can actually communicate good information about the history and the past of the area. But the internet is also lovely. I've started to upload some videos on old Barbados and Quakers and whatnot, the untold story of Quakers and so on in Barbados. So that sort of thing for a small area of the various along the hike. It doesn't mean that the National Trust alone has provenance over that. It means that anybody, if it's on the internet, anybody who wants to learn more about the area with a view to actually taking people and showing them and actually being able to say something about the area, anybody can do that. So that is something that well, I was trying to do it originally. I think I don't know if trust will get there or not. There's always the issue of funding and that sort of thing. So those are the types of things that are possible. Lots, and it doesn't. You don't need to be a highly qualified individual to go and walk about with and carry people. And most people have a cell phone. They can actually be watching the video or, you know, basically looking at the information as they actually walk. So, you know, there are real possibilities there that are there for the grab, for the taking.
Yes.
Janine, what are your thoughts on all of this? What's your reaction to what you've heard from John?
This is actually a lot, to be quite honest, but I'm glad to be, as a young person, to actually hear this information. Some of it, to be quite honest, I'm hearing for the first time. So it's for me to now take this into consideration and what's happening with Barbados and what can happen to us. The comment that Paul said earlier is still playing in my mind. I really don't want us to turn into a concrete jungle at all, but I do hope that the government is listening to what Mr. Knott has said and even what Paul has said and take it into consideration for the future of our beautiful Barbados.
John, question for you. When I look at the area, the cliff and so on, and I think of what construction could do, whether it is some single dwelling of some very high net worth individual buying the property, or constructing, let's say, some condominiums. What damage does that do? Apart from the aesthetics of the thing, what damage can that possibly do to the location itself? I mean, and apart from the heritage, I mean, the historic nature of artifacts and all that. I'm just looking at it and asking myself, is this not something that is perhaps fragile in the whole scheme of things? That you're not only spoiling what aesthetically is so, but you may be in terms of the actual topography and the geology and whatever. That's not my thing, but I'm just looking at it as a lay person and wondering what damage could possibly be done if we get into, I just...
Let me give you an example. The Indian Trail, if you say that it starts up in the north, and you can actually follow it well down to Pori Spring, to where the springs are and the caves and so on. That used to be actually also a main road, because 2A did not exist. It was to bridge the gullies along Highway 2A took resources that were not available in the 16 and 1700s, 1800s. So you couldn't travel north along Highway 2A as we do now, just so. So there was a track or a trail which got the name from the hikers as the Old Indian Trail. That if you wanted to go north, that's how you went north, along that track. You rode your horse along there, or you walked, or whatever. If you look at the really early map of Barbados, 1675 or so, you'll see that Highway 1 did not exist either. And the reason it didn't exist is because any bridging that might have been done would have washed out constantly. So whole town floods. I've seen pictures of Spikes Down, where the bridge, again, you go over the bridge, you don't even think about it, where all that was washed out. It just was heavy rain. The water came, just like how the water came down in River Bay. It came down down there through the and it took away everything. So people in those days actually traveled by ship from Spikes Down. So if you wanted to go north, you went from the south. You go on a ship that was going that way, and you went north, and you went to Spikes Down. There was a schooner service that was back and forward between Spikes Down and Bridgetown, operated into the 1900s. Now it's more like a pleasure. It's like a pleasure cruise that you would go on without realizing that this was a normal way of transportation in the really early days when there were no roads. So those types of things are really worthwhile thinking about. I don't know preserving, but at least knowing about it. If you know about it, then you really have you think twice before you go and do foolishness with the land,
with the area. Yes,
right.
Yes, I wanted to make a point that how I know that we are having a challenge with our coastlines and so on. To your point, Maxine, about what damage will happen to the coastline. When my grandfather was a young man, he would take my uncle by the hand and walk from Pile Bay all the way on low tide. He said he would walk all the way up to Spikes Down on the beach. There was a time when he was able to get all the way up to Spikes Down on the beach, right? And with the changing of the addition of groins and putting all these grids and rocks and so on into the water, it's completely affecting the topography and the landscape along the west coast. But I'm sure that building and so on will also have that type of effect on the east coast as well. It's only natural because you're changing how things naturally work and flow. And I remember I was in Paynes Bay a couple of weeks ago, behind a place called Old Trees, and I saw somebody just they got the ocean knocked their wall down, and they just took these big rocks and put it behind the thing just to preserve their wall. Now, anybody that knows about preserving the coastline and so on will know that you don't put rocks in front of a reef. They're supposed to go behind the reef so that you can have sand deposits and the rebuilding of the beach, right? And so I had made a call to two ministers, and I said to them, I said, look, I said, did you guys give permission for this thing to happen or not? They said, we're not sure. I said, but who do I ask to find out get permission for this? Because your guys are in charge. And he said, but I'm not sure, Paul. Let me check. Right? But this guy is building, this guy is putting rocks down and changing the topography of the beach. So much so that people are no longer able to walk freely up down the beach and run. If you had some deficiency, some malformation in terms of your body or whatever, you really cannot walk past there anymore because of how they're changing the topography and the beaches and the structures and so on. So for me, as a person and the spokesman of environment, it's something that I'm very concerned about. I remember on the same West Coast, I mean, we were talking about River Bay, but on the same West Coast, I remember there was a particular tractor that was driven through a coral reef, right? An established coral reef. And I can't call names, of course, but I was watching this and I said, but what's going on here, right? But we are supposed to be the tip of the spear in terms of climate change and environmental protections and so on.
Right, we have to practice it. I want to look at a question that was posed about why might Mr. Bino want to sell. Well, I can't speak for Mr. Bino, but when I think of property, one of the things that you have to consider when you have a piece of property is property tax. And I mean, John, you probably can do the math faster than I can. But if the asking price is anywhere near to the price that is carried for land tax value, the value of the land for tax purposes, you're talking about a pretty piece of change on a yearly basis. Mm-hmm. And if you have that property, and this is it, I mean, so if you have that, because, if the land is not developed, if it's not, that's the term they use when you look at calculate. So in other words, a piece of land with nothing on it, the rate of tax is higher than you would if you had a house on it, for example. Wow. So when I looked at it, I just thought of the size bill that he would have had for, because I don't know when he acquired it and whether he was aware of all the things that John pointed out, or if all of those things, And so for me, I presume, and you can tell me, John, if the other, that to me is a logical reason to want to sell if when you look at all the restrictions that there might be for developing the property, the land.
Well, if you're in arrears with land tax, you get away for a certain amount of time, and then you get notice and so on, and you'll go through the process of auctioning it. Whatever the value, I'm not sure what value it. Land in Barbados, you can. there's no logical way to explain what valuations are put on land. But if you are owning land and you have to pay tax on the land, that's obviously a cost for you. If the government valued it high, and you have it improved up to the hill, you're going to pay a lot of tax. So you may find yourself in a position where you can't pay the tax, and government will literally take it from you. They'll put it advertise it for auction, and it's gone. It's no longer yours. Whatever you after you pay arrears, you get the balance, and you can go along and do what you want with the balance. So that's so different, I think, from the past. A lot of people actually rented land from plantations and so on to farm and grow food for themselves and other people. The plantation paid the tax for the whole thing. People usually rented it at a peppercorn rent. But what we're looking at is the more house lots that you can get, the more taxes the government will collect.
That's true.
Right? You
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying? So it's in government's interest to basically develop the land and collect taxes. So so perhaps what we are seeing happening to Barbados is, you know, it's gone mad. People have gone, people have gone mad, and however much taxes are collected, you never have enough
You
because
never have enough.
there's always deficits. There's never anything. You never hear about a surplus. There will always be deficits, which means more money has to be either borrowed, and to pay back the loans, you you have to generate income. So
Well, that's right.
one of the ways is taxes. I I looked at it recently. I can't remember the number, but you should look and see how much land taxes the government collects. Look at the difference between now and go back maybe 20 years and see what the difference is, and that will tell you how much development has happened.
In fact, even in terms of the mid-year report done by the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Strong, he presented a report, and there's a document you can look at, and the land taxes were for the period more than projected, because I think they did a couple of things. The bills came out earlier because people received the bills in less than a year after the last set or whatever. So even before you get to what you're saying, John, you realize what happens. But the truth is, when they do that, they collect more, and there's a desire to sell if you have a piece of land that you have not developed, because for the individual, if it is undeveloped, you pay more taxes. But if it is developed and the government gets more because of the larger number of units or whatever the case may be, it's a knowing kind of thing for the person who has a piece of land like this and may have. I don't know what Mr. Bynum might have had in mind when he purchased it. I don't know if he ever sought to develop it, or I never had a conversation with him or saw reported anywhere. But
I think there's something in today's paper.
Okay. So where he talks about it, I must confess I didn't read today's paper, so I will have to go back and look at that. But it's an important issue. I still believe that, given all that we've said, perhaps you can pick up, John, what his comments were on this. But I still think that when I look at this, and when I recall for generations of Barbadians in the past who have enjoyed this area, for visitors who can be given the opportunity to enjoy it, and for Barbadians to come, the value to the benefits, if you look to, I don't know how you quantify those benefits, but I think the benefits to all of those, I would call them stakeholders, in keeping it pristine. And I like that word, because when you go there, you feel, there's a feeling that you get that you don't get if you drive up Black Rock Main Road, or and that's because and I just think that there's something about that which allows people to go. There was a question, as John looks at the newspaper, there was a question about the question, I think, was about bathroom facilities, but if I remember correctly, and it might have been something Dave had put up earlier, part of that property is, when you look at the area, part of the area is owned by government. And so those facilities may be on the government side of the land, or permission might have been given to government to put those up there. So that's for public use, and, so that may create a different scenario. But it is a beautiful part of Barbados. It is historic, and I think that as we come, Janine will signal because I know we try to stick to time, and so I would want to to hear, John, from you. What are some of your final thoughts on, well, not final, but your kind of concluding thoughts for today on this? Because I think we need to hear some more about not only there, but that whole area and the national park aspect of it, the historic part of it. But so what would you want to say to Barbadians about this from all that you've shared and all that we've been seeing in the media recently?
I would say, remember, Mr. Bino is a private citizen of Barbados. He owns the land. He can sell it and do with it as he pleases, but it must fit within the regulations and so on, whatever the regulations are for the national park. So I think it's supposed to be. I think the government is supposed to own 2 acres. Down there where the facilities are. It says basically he has, any landowner has the right to do with the land as it please. And if government can buy it, maybe that's good. But maybe government shouldn't be in the business of getting into private enterprise. They should keep their nose out, because everything they touch seems to turn to dust. So maybe just leave private people alone. By all means, make sure that the regulations are what the stipulations are observed, and let life go on.
But if in trying to, let's say no individual wants to buy that. Mr. Bino wants to sell for whatever reasons. And as I said, I could hazard one if I owned it, what way I might want to sell it. If we're talking about keeping it that way, should even if, as I suggested, some Barbadian loving philanthropists decide we're going to come together and gift this to Barbados, then I think government should, in the same way that, I think Farley Hill National Park,
trust.
That is right. However that is operated, that model perhaps should be used, and I presume government has some kind of role in there. And we've seen Farley Hill maintained to a reasonable standard generally. That's my take on it. But I don't know, when you were talking, John, about private, I wasn't sure what you meant in terms of government being involved.
Well, I mean, look at what has happened like down at Bay Street. What's happened in Miss Ram, I think Savvy by the Sea, and so on.
Right.
That something isn't right about what I don't know what it is, but something just is not right about what went on down there. So you cannot interfere with Mr. Bino and what he's doing. He says here all he's done is put the land on the market. He doesn't see.
Right.
In fact, he said he may not get a buyer.
Okay.
But basically, maybe what he's done is, or what he's doing is simply saying, I want $2.7 million US for it. So that's the value of the land. So government, if you want to buy it,
buy it at that.
Buy it at that. Sell it at that. Because they put it on the market.
Yes.
I'm not asking government to compulsory acquire some bargain basement price. I'm just saying that if Barbadians and others think that this is best preserved in this form, I think it is it may be unfair, unreasonable to ask the owner to not sell his land because Barbadians like it. But if he wants to sell and we want to preserve it, then my thing is that, I don't see it as the same scenario as the compulsory acquisition in the case of what you mentioned, Ms. Ram's property. I'm seeing a different scenario. Mr. Bino wants to sell. Barbadians who now understand that this was not public land for them to traverse and do as they like, but we were actually trespassing, if you want to call it that. Permission, even though we were trespassing.
Yeah. Every Sunday morning when they're like, we trespassed.
Okay. And Mr. Bino was gracious enough not to put some kind of barrier to stop you. But if he's saying, this land is valuable And for whatever reason, I think that unless I do otherwise, I believe I should sell it. And if we say that Barbadians are saying we are not comfortable with somebody coming in and buying this who may not be a Barbadian and who may want to do something that prevents us from doing what Mr. Bino allowed us to do for the entire time that he owned it, then there is, to my mind, the opportunity for government to say that there's a bigger benefit to be derived from the money that we acquire this in terms of the national benefit, the possible opportunity for another tourism attraction and so on. But I'm not asking that people that just you'd say to Mr. Bino, we want this for public use and therefore we're going to pay you what we feel like. That's not what I'm saying.
Understood.
He's owned it. He says in the paper that he's owned it for 25 years.
Okay.
So obviously the people who owned it before also had people walking backward. So I think that maybe that's an established thing that there's a right of way that can't be taken away. I don't know. Right?
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks. Janine, over to you.
Yeah, so John, we want to thank you so much for coming on tonight and sharing your knowledge with us. Paul, do you have any closing remarks before you go as well? We want to thank you as well for coming on again.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say that I think that Barbados is at the stage where we have to make a decision as to what we want our future to look like. And we need to begin to put thought and plans in place to preserve what people come to Barbados for. If we sell it all off, if we destroy it, if we concretize it all, there will come a time when people will find somewhere else to go to enjoy their vacations and so on. We dispose of our beaches, we dispose of our properties that are so beautiful and cherished. And we have to stop and ask ourselves the question, what do we want Barbados to look like in another 50 to 80 years and beyond? It is a serious conversation. I know that we have this much money being borrowed. Even, we have some sort of money to do something that would preserve some of what we have. Yes, and stop destroying our country the way we are. And that's my closing comment.
The money wasn't borrowed to preserve.
Thanks so much again, Paul. Thanks again, John. This session has been very educating. And I'm glad that you did enjoy it. And as you continue to agitate and liberate the people of Barbados, I hope that your concerns are taken to heart. So have a good night, gentlemen, and thank you for coming on again.
Pleasure being here.
Thank you. Good to have you.
Thank you very much.
Very useful information.
All right. Stop sharing.
Okay. So Janine is our next guest here?
Yes, most definitely. We have a guest all the way from the Bahamas, Dr. Cassia Stroke. I do apologize about the waiting in the back room. Very good to have you again with us on the Marcia Week Show. I do know that you have some exciting news for us. And what's happening in the Bahamas Parliament. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys? Hello, Barbados. Hello, Caribbean. I hope everybody's well.
Hello to you.
It's always good to be here and be on the show. I love the show.
Yes. So you can go right ahead and Cassius in regards to what the action that has happened within your parliament.
Of course, 23 years to the date, I was arrested and for handcuffing myself to the speaker's base. And I was a young man and a rebel, and they were gerrymandering, cutting the boundaries at that time. And so at the time, as leader of the third party, we decided to handcuff ourselves to the speaker's space to show that the democracy was handcuffed. And we were able to take the mates went to the police station with us because they couldn't get it off. What we did was we put crazy glue and sand in the keyhole so they couldn't take the handcuff off. So they had to take us and the mates to the jail. So that was the anniversary. And so the Free National Movement deputy leader decided to mimic something similar to what we did. And of course, he took the mace and he threw it out of the window. And of course, Parliament cannot sit without the mace. And quite frankly, the Speaker of the House was really biased against the opposition party and wasn't fair. Of course, she claims to be an independent speaker, but she takes the dictates from the prime minister and members of her party. And the members of the opposition felt that they weren't getting a fair shake in terms of equal speaking rights and having always being disrupted and so on. And so they felt a need to make a statement. And so that day we decided to we had a mass protest on the outside, and whilst they were on the inside, they were doing their protest on the inside. And so it just reached a boiling point though, that the Caribbean, the Bahamas, we're seeing an uptick in the narcotics trafficking throughout our waters into the United States. And then you have senior members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force implicated in the indictment, for allowing drugs to pass through. This particular police officer was in charge of the airport, I think, and the seaport. And with his authority and with his permission, they were allowing drugs to pass through the jurisdiction, and that became a very serious indictment. And he was also indicating that um, he's been getting his directive or order from some senior politician. Now we don't know the name of the senior politician as yet. However, that is being right now being done or being discussed in the federal indictment. And so we wanted to know who is the politician who is implicated in the indictment. And so it's some serious times right now in the country. And of course, corruption is something that we should not tolerate, whether it's in the Bahamas or in Barbados. And so we have to begin to stand up as citizens against whether it's the authorities or the politicians or whoever, and say, listen, we want to make sure that our country has leaders of integrity. And I am so, I mean, I'm heartbroken because, of course, we went through this in the 1980s with a heavy drug infestation passing through the Bahamas, where members of the Bahamas government was implicated or indicted, or names were called as a part of the drug ring from Carlos Leader and the other guy from Colombia, wasn't it? And so we don't want to go back there. And right now, today, the Royal Bahamas Police Force confiscated a plane load full of cocaine, and they apprehended 7 persons, including 2 Colombians and 5 Bahamians. Um, so this type of information is heartbreaking because, it seems to be that there seems to be cocaine is now on the move again, like it was in the 1980s, but it destroys your country because it destroys the country's name. And then because the fast money, the $2 million, $3 million, you have people who are struggling financially are easily lured into that. And so this is something that we are battling it right now. And so we have to begin to now root out corruption all of our gates. So that's what's going on in the Bahamas.
That is quite a lot.
It is a
So,
lot.
yeah. So today, after all of this has occurred, what are your how do you feel today? How is it settling over there?
Well, you have the people. The people are up in arms now. I think the people are up in arms. The citizenry is saying that, listen, we don't want to tolerate, and we don't want our government officials to be implicated or to be a part of corruption. And so, the thing about corruption is it grows. It's letting the first contract go through. It's letting the first deal go through, and then you figure you get away with that, and it mushrooms. We have to stumble corruption at all gates. And so, my proposal next week is going to be that we have to begin to take a tough stance on drugs. And one of the stands is going to be that if you get caught with importing drugs into the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the sentence is death. If you get caught with smuggling guns into the Bahamas, the sentence is death. That's the only way we're gonna win that war. You cannot play around. You cannot pussyfoot with it. You cannot half step with it. You have to be firm with it. If you get caught importing drugs into the Bahamas, we will execute you. Simple. That's my call next week. Next week to the Bahamas.
Question for you: How do you think the population will respond? I mean, that is something. If you think in terms of some of the penalties in places like Singapore and other countries in the Pacific Rim, how do you think Bahamians will react to that? Because, I mean, as you said, you need to have something drastic to.
Well, most Caribbean countries have become woke. Our leaders have been softening us up because, we have no problems with executing babies in the womb, but we want to protect criminals. And so I don't subscribe to that mantra. We have no problems with abortion. We can kill all the children in the world in the womb, but we want to protect the rights of criminals. I don't subscribe to that. I believe that, if you commit the crime and we find that you're guilty and those crimes that are treasonous, like importing drugs into the Bahamas, we should execute you. And then once we do that, we will see that a number of persons will think twice before they even decide to want to import or do drugs. Now, Singapore does it, Malaysia does it, and they don't have a drug problem. China does it, they do not have a drug problem. The problem is that we want to pacify the criminals and we want to give the criminals too much rights. Amnesty International, Human Rights International, those organizations are demonic. And I don't subscribe to them. I don't listen to them. I don't hear them because they do not support the views and the value system of myself and the country. And so sorry about that. And it's important for us to begin to put our foot down. If you want to fix the crime problem, though, you've got to be aggressive. You got to be firm. Now, Bukele in El Salvador, you saw if you look at his story, of course, El Salvador 2 years ago was the most dangerous country in the world. Now, today, they are the safest country in the world because Bukele does not play around with criminals. He arrests all of the gang leaders. In fact, he told his entire cabinet that, listen, one thing he wants to do is make sure leave a legacy. He had his entire cabinet under investigation, and he locked up some of them because they were also a part of, underhand dealings. We got to cut it out. We got to cut it out from the root, and that's the only way. If you're a cabinet minister, member of parliament, attorney general, police officer, wherever you fall in the line of government hierarchy, if you are corrupt, we got to arrest you. We got to sentence you to jail. If you are dealing drugs, bringing guns and drugs into the Bahamas, I say execute them. That's the only way. That's the only way we're gonna win the war. You cannot win the war by pampering the criminals and giving them, 10 years in jail, and then we feed them every day and give them cigarettes and make their life easy. No. If you break our law, we will execute you.
The interesting thing is, and you made reference to El Salvador, and I have been around long enough to see how fearful anybody would have been going into that country. But you hear people within the Caribbean saying we want to be safe and we want our countries to be free of drugs. But my worry is that people will balk at the what was done, in the name of human rights, and you've expressed your opinion. But as somebody here says, the Barbados will not support death for drug dealers; they'll all be killing themselves. And it is in fact, and people up to today, somebody was recirculating a photograph, and people have complained that you had the opening of Parliament, and persons who were invited would normally not be seen to participate in those things. And when you do that, what damage are you doing? I mean, all that you describe is the whole damage to the country. Bahamas, the population is about how big again?
420,000.
That's a small population, and so you really, I mean, you listen to that story and you ask yourself, how, well, I suppose, how do people get it? Because the corruption is right, you know, at the height of the pinnacle of organization, so to speak. And but we, you know, it really does, I mean, does not sit well for your country. So I wait to see the reaction to your proposals, really, you know.
Well, like I said, the Bahamas is not the only country that is dealing with this. Of
No.
course, we have, the other day the Jamaican Prime Minister was implicated in some major fraud issue. You have, Barbados has its own issues, and then we can go down the line with all of the other countries who are struggling with this very type of thing. But the example has already been set. The example is that you look at countries like El Salvador, who have made the transition, and see what their success story. We have to stop playing with criminals. But we have organizations that are danger to the Caribbean, like Amnesty International and human rights, under the guise of human rights. They don't care about human rights. If they cared about human rights, they would not allow 800,000 babies to be aborted in America every year. And so, you know, so what they do is they make it look like they care about human rights, but they don't. And so for me, though, for those who commit criminals, we have to punish criminals, and we cannot allow criminals to destroy the whole fabric. Remember, now, the part is never greater than the whole. And so one person, one person,
I think
You're
you
one,
lost.
muted. Yeah.
Okay.
oh,
Yeah, you were muted for a
yeah,
minute.
one person should not be allowed to destroy the whole country. And so we have to preserve the whole. And so when we protect a part, like a police officer or a politician, at the expense of the whole, we can't allow one man or one individual to destroy the whole country. We have to eradicate them and get them out. We have to weed them out, because these guys are destroying our country. And so in our case, we have a senior high ranking police officer who sits next to the commissioner of police. And of course, he now stepped down yesterday. The commissioner of
Right.
police stepped down yesterday, so we now had to bring in a new commissioner of police, the first female commissioner of police in the country. And so that is something that we're grappling with. And but like I said, we're gonna navigate through this landmine, and I know that we're gonna come out better on the other side. But if you want to fix it through the Caribbean, you got to stop being passive when it comes to criminality. You got to punish criminals, and that's the only way. That's the only way to do it.
Right. So you're saying even if they don't, because I know some persons in the comments were saying that the people might not accept the penalty that you suggested. But I guess what you're actually trying to say is that even if they don't, like at least it's in place, so that persons would be afraid to go ahead and commit these type of crimes.
I mean, there are always people who wouldn't want to accept that, and but after a while, they get adjusted. They get adjusted to the fact that if you don't want to die, just don't do drugs. If you don't want to be executed, just don't bring guns in the country. It's a simple thing. I mean, for me, I'm not afraid of the police, because I don't commit crimes. Only those who commit crimes are afraid of the police. And so if you're not going to bring guns and drugs into the country, then you have no worry. The law doesn't affect you. The law is powerless when you are righteous. But if you are unrighteous, in other words, if you are implicated in bringing guns into the country, then the law affects you. And so, we cannot be passive when it comes to fixing the problems in the Caribbean, because the Caribbean has a bad name, from the inception of Forbes Burnham and Chidi Jagan down in Guyana, and we can go on up the list, from all of the leaders who fought for liberation of the Caribbean countries, and then they became when they became the leaders, they did the very same thing, or even worse than what the colonial masters did. And so these are some of the things we're grappling with. But Paul Dagami in Africa is doing a wonderful job of showing how we could begin to shape and forge a new future. Bukele in El Salvador is showing how we could shape a new future. Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore set the stage for Lee Kuan Yew set the stage for most. Hold on, 1 second. 1 second.
Sure.
Lee Kuan Yew set the stage. Lee Kuan Yew set the stage for most of us for us to be able to follow an example. And so Singapore is number one because they did it right. They did not tolerate criminality from inception. And if you want to get it right in Barbados, if you want to get it right in St. Lucia, if you want to get it right in Jamaica, then we got to do what it takes to get it right. And then forget the little noise in the market. Forget the one who is complaining, and say, listen, we gotta do it right. We gotta protect the future of our country. So for the next 50 years, for Barbados, the Bahamas, St. Lucia, Guyana, we got to get it right.
Question for you though, in terms of, because you said that your next move is to propose that you take a tougher stance and for example, the death penalty be something that you would recommend. What's the parliamentary procedure for getting that on the statute books? What's going to be required in terms of making it law? Getting the necessary legislation in place. Do you have it's like a simple majority? What if you take a piece of legislation to Parliament? I'm just trying to understand what might be some of the. I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing your volume has gone again. Okay.
So it's not a complicated process. I mean, it's just another bill we have to pass in Parliament. Procedures. When they're dealing with crime and criminality, we just have to. We don't need a constitutional amendment to make that
Okay,
happen.
simple majority then.
Yeah, simple majority, because we just putting tightening up the sentences for drug dealers and weapons traffickers. And so, but we like I said, we all are parents, and we all know that when we allow our children to continue to be rude and do this disgusting, what happens in the end? They bring embarrassment and disgraceful to the whole family. Simple as we have to, as a nation and as nations in the Caribbean, we got to begin to put our foot down when it comes to making sure that we can preserve our country. And so that's why it's important for us to begin to be firm when it comes to dealing with criminality and crime, and also it's the smaller things, because when you go to, you know, the Bahamas and Barbados, just something as simple as littering and avoiding disobeying traffic rules and so on, all of those things add up to the big things. And so when it comes to correcting and making sure that we can have a country, a nation of law and order, it's the small things that count. The littering, the children that doesn't have any manners, that does not respect their elders, and so on. When you look at countries like Japan, for the first 4 years, they teach their children manners and respect, and they teach them about society and order before they teach them math and English. And so for us as Caribbean nations, we got to go back and we got to look at all the different models around the world and figure out what works and what don't work. And then we could now begin to incorporate some of those systems into our way of life. Because listen, there's nowhere in the world like the Caribbean. The Caribbean has some of the most beautiful people, beautiful islands, beautiful waters, but we are still stained with corruption. We're still stained with all this thing that is causing us to have this dark shadow of cloud over us. And that's what I don't like. I don't like that because, we need to be able to, when I look at countries like Singapore, Malaysia, the Asian countries are now doing so well, but the black countries, the black Caribbean countries, we can't get our act together. And that's what angers me. We need to get our act together as black people.
I think you've just touched on something outside of the issue of criminality, and that has to do with behaviors. I would also probably call it certain value systems that we exhibit. And I know about maybe 5, 6, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, no, CARICOM, because you mentioned, you're talking about the Caribbean, not just a single jurisdiction. CARICOM put together what was part of a strategic plan, and they talked about the quote unquote ideal CARICOM citizen, the kind of values, etc. And I think you've touched on something, because one of the things that concerns me, I mean, I see it in Barbados, I see it elsewhere, is a level of what I call discipline. A simple thing like um, school uniforms and a dress code, rather than look to enforce the kind of things that work for us, we seem, and in Barbados is an example recently, we seem to be adopting a more do what you want to do kind of approach. And what is particularly concerning for me is it seems as though we're getting even more lax with our males, and that worries me, because in a society where, when we look at academic performance, whether it's the common entrance exam, university participation, and other tertiary level education, the males seem to be opting out. And my concern is that, whether it was females or males, but in this case, we hear a lot of concerns about the needs to address the needs of women. But I'm watching a society where we're going the other extreme, and our young men, if we go back to criminality, you would have seen the incidents of murder, 16-year-olds committing murder, 17-year-olds. And then we have our young men who are opting out of formal education and so on. So that is, that is a major concern for me. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head, because when it comes to a society, the best way to break down a society is to get the young men out of focus. And the young boys are out of focus, everything goes haywire. We have to begin to rebuild and refocus on our boys. I think for the last 20 years, I was a part of the United Nations, and I think when the movement of empowerment of women was there, I was a goodwill ambassador there, and we focus on empowerment of women at the expense of forgetting about the boys. And now the young boys have been forgotten and lost, and now we find ourselves with a society where the young boys are like zombies. They don't know where they fit in, and all of the women are empowered, but we don't know where the boys are. And so we have to begin, when we focus on anything to do with gender, we have to do a gender balance thing. Don't push one gender over the other. And so when I understand that the trouble that women had in terms of getting accepted in society, but now we see an imbalance in society, I think the moving forward is a gender balance approach to building society, where we can now look at everybody is empowered and everybody has equal access and equal rights, and everybody's appreciated. Women have been getting a lot of attention, rightfully so, they need it. However, the men have not gotten attention over the last 20 years, the boys, and now we find ourselves with them lagging behind. We have to build strong men. The only way to build our society is to build strong men. We got to build strong men in the Caribbean and Barbados and St. Lucia. I don't like the fact that most of our men are now effeminate. They're soft, and the men now wants to be girls and put on dress. That type of thing is going, we going chaotic in that way. We have to build strong men with families. Your prime minister said it. Your country has a low population rate. The only way to have a population rate that grows is you have families, a man and a woman and family. That has to be at the core of every society, the nuclear family. And so we're missing that. And because we miss that, I think it's important now for us to now focus on that. And then when you look at responsible men, they won't go selling drugs or bringing in guns or doing things that are chaotic and contrary to societal norms. And once we do that, I think we will be on the right track. We have to have a trajectory for the next 50 years. And part of that is making sure that we can build strong men and strong families.
I want to say though, I mean, as somebody who would have been very much involved in the whole issue of gender and particularly focusing on women. Women took on the issues that they felt challenged by. I have lived in a society where I have seen, if I use an example, my son as a Boy Scout, being in a Boy Scout movement where the leader of the Boy Scouts at his school was a male, and that was not typical. The point I'm making is men also have to get up and address the issue of males and boys in particular, because, and I agree with you, we need gender balance. But I think that in a lot of ways, Caribbean men have abdicated their responsibility to to their families, one, and to their sons. And this is something that has to be addressed. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is in the Bahamas, but we have a lot of, and this was a comment that I made earlier, that part of the problem is we talk about single mothers, and my concern is that even if a woman is not in a marriage, that she should not be a single parent. If you're a single woman or a single man and you have children, you should be part of the nuclear family. Is ideal, yes, but the reality in the Caribbean is that there are a lot of people that is not necessarily predominant. But what is worrisome for me is the abdication of responsibility of parents. And in the case of boys, too many boys are missing male role models in their families.
Yes.
And I think that is an issue.
For the next 50 years is to rebuild voice, to rebuild the gender balance, and to try to get the nuclear family strong again, because I have 4 daughters and I know how it is to raise children. And with my wife, it was still difficult raising children. So those who try to do it alone, I don't know how they do it. And so we did our best in trying to raise children, raise our kids together. It was difficult, but we did a good job. But the struggle with people trying to raise children by themselves with no fathers in the home, and mothers always do a good job. Um, that's where we have to go back. We have to teach our young men the responsibility of being fathers, being in the family, because you find yourselves making bad decisions, compromising decisions like getting into guns and drugs when you don't have a guidance over you, somebody who guide you and nudge you in the right direction. And there's always a train a child in the way you should go, but the problem is the train is the engine in the front. The train ain't working, and so the car in the back ain't going nowhere, and that's the problem. You can only train a child if the train is moving. And so so the fathers need to be the train, the engine in the front, leading the way. And so we got a lot of work to do in the Caribbean. But I think it's for us to have the conversation, for us to continue the conversation, and to get civil society as a part of the dialogue to try to rebuild. We depend too much on politicians. We depend too much on the parliament. The politicians are broken because they come from society. They come from among the society. And so just as broken our societies are, it's our parliament. And so that's why we need civil society, we need churches, we need, and non-governmental organizations, all to be a part of the building blocks of the next 50 years, the new trajectory of building the Caribbean, building a Caribbean where we have good leaders, good husbands, good wives, good children, all who know how to make the right decision. And then also we need integrity. Integrity is we come from the word integrated. It means whatever you say is who you are. And so we realize that there's a gap between what we say and who we are. And so, like I said, we got a lot of work to do. I'm not sure we'll be able to accomplish it in my lifetime, but at least we can start. And once we start the process, I believe that we'll be on the right direction. Pray for my country. We are going through a lot right now because we had some leaders made bad decisions that is affecting everybody. And but like I said, there's always a remnant, and there's always a dark cloud. And as long as Cassius Stewart got a voice, I can stand up for what is right.
Well said. Janine, over to
Yes.
you.
Dr. Stewart, I want to thank you so much for coming on. As all of the loyal opposition can see, you were moving from place to place, but you mean that you had to share your story with us tonight to let us know what is happening in the Bahamas. I really do want to thank you.
Yeah.
You are,
Thank
as you said, you are a person who always stand up for what is right, and we want to continue to encourage you to do so. I know that only God can give you the amount of strength that you have for all that you continue to do for your country and for the current region of as a whole, because we do have to take a page out of your book. I mean, Marcy is doing it here, and I mean, as I'm glad that everybody can come together and have these types of conversations, like the one that you're sharing with us now, so that we can know what is happening with our brothers and our sisters in the other Caribbean islands. And to the loyal opposition and everyone on here, I hope that you heard Dr. Short speak to pray for the Bahamas and everything that they're going through. And I know that he will continue to also pray for us here in Barbados that we can drive out corruption. And you heard his plea for us to get back to that family base. And that is something that can really take us a far place. Do you have any closing remarks, Mr. Stewart?
Well, I just want to say, as a Bajan, of course, everybody may know that my father is from Barbados. And so as a Bajan, I have very good connections, and I still have a lot of family in Barbados that I come and visit often. And Marcy has adopted me as a part of a family as well too. So I want to see the best. I want the best for our country. I want the best for the Bahamas. I want the best for Barbados. I want the best for Jamaica, St. Lucia. I have friends throughout the Caribbean. And like I said, every Caribbean represents a part of God that nobody else can express. And so, but we need to make sure that as we grow, as we thrive, and as our economies grow, that we can grow, and we can grow in the right path. We can produce a country that our grandchildren will be proud of, where there's little corruption, no crime, and prosperity for all. My country name is named the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, where the wealth is common. We are still thriving towards the commonwealth. It's very uncommon now, but we want to make sure that everybody has access to wealth, education, healthcare, and when we lay our head down and rest with our fathers, we know that we did a good job, and we're passing it on to the next generation. So Barbados continue to thrive for greatness, continue to thrive for excellence, and don't tolerate corruption in any form.
Well, thank you very much. And I wish you all the best for Christmas and the coming year. And I look forward to improvements, because we don't want your image tarnished. And as you say, we're all part of the Caribbean, part of CARICOM, one big family. And you certainly have your roots from this part of the world, as well as you indicated, at least your paternal roots. So I wish you all the best, and I look forward to engaging with you again. I hope we together, the two of us, added up to part of Marcia.
Yes, you all did a wonderful job, wonderful job. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you
Everybody in
very much.
Barbados, Merry
Merry Christmas
Christmas.
to you to
Thank you very
continue to
much.
keep up the good fight.
Yes, thank you very
I
much.
send some gifts, so if y'all want to send me some gifts, just let me know. I'm
Well,
open.
we'll organize. No drugs at all. Not even for your headache.
Thank you all so much. I really
Thank you
appreciate it.
too.
And,
Thank you too for
Have
your
a good
time.
evening. Thank you.
all
Bless
right,
you.
y'all have a good one. All right.
Thank you very much. Uh, Janine, if we could
Yes.
follow up on a couple of the comments that came out of, because
Yeah.
we really would have thing. I think Tamika put up a comment about the differential ways of raising boys.
Mhm.
And Imperator is saying Western societies are purposely, but here's what Tamika is saying. What's your reaction to that, and what's your experience? In my growing years, I saw how sons and daughters were treated differently in families. Daughters were expected to do more than even the sons. So it wasn't a surprise to me to see women handling things.
Yeah,
Your
I
reaction?
I agree. I think that is something that is still happening. It isn't a thing of the past. Unfortunately, as Cassius was saying just now, that this is why some of the boys become so soft, because the girls also have to be tough. So it's like you're also treated as the boys, a girl, but then she cannot go outside and the guy could be the person to be outside. So a lot of this has caused. I know sometimes the parents see this as a thing of maybe protecting, but it has also caused lots of issues with the children as well, a lot of trauma, and it has caused persons to even to grow up into adults with this trauma and to see some of the crime and violence that we see today, or how people may even react to certain situations. And I think that the fact that all of us can recognize this, maybe parents now can learn from these past mistakes that other parents made and be able to correct them for the future.
I think the other thing about it is in terms of the differential treatment, boys are often given what I call a pass. Some boys, in the sense that girls are expected to juggle school and helping at home and so on. I mean, well, I grew up, as I mentioned, in a large household of lots of brothers and sisters. I was one of 11. I had 7 brothers and 3 sisters. And there were 10 of us who grew up. But there was a point when my mother said, you know what? Each of y'all got to do for, you had to learn to do whatever. So my brothers had to learn to cook. They had to take responsibility for certain things because, so it's a question of how you do that. Because at the end of the day, if you do that differential treatment of children, the guys tend to be disadvantaged. That's one thing. The other concern, I think, is that where there needs to be both a male and female parent in terms of from looking on. A girl has to be exposed to her father and her mother, similarly with a boy. I have a son, and very early I told him, I can teach you to be the kind of boy I would like you to be, but I don't think I can teach you to be a man. That is not my role, and as such. And there have to be role models in terms of father, uncles, grandfather, whatever the case may be. But I think generally part of what we have to do, and this is something I did with my son, because some people have a view about coeducation, and my thinking was that my son went to secondary school. Well, he went to primary school. They were nursery school. There were boys and girls. But I said, when you go to secondary school, you'll probably realize that in the first year or two, the girls seem so much more mature. You cannot be distracted. You live in a world with men and women, and you have to function in that. And if you get sidetracked, the girls will leave you behind. But, and there was another comment earlier, as long as there's a vision, hope, and passion, there are possibilities. Now, my mother put me on a stool in front of the stove and broom in my hand, and I can be the perfect husband. Mr. God, this is, but my thinking is this, and this is what I said to my son. Nobody bathes, nobody brushes your teeth for you, nobody showers you. Why shouldn't you learn how to take care of other aspects of being able to be comfortable, cooking, making your own meals, preparing, cleaning a house or whatever the case may be? I don't know. Janine, you have brothers? What are you?
No, I only have sisters.
Oh, okay. So you can you never had to deal with that,
No.
But it's But are there any other day? I'll ask this to David. Are there any other interesting comments? Because I suspect that we have. How much time do we have left?
We only have 4 minutes. Yeah,
so
4 minutes.
Perhaps we can see if there's another comment that you can tackle. I believe that as adults, Mr. Gad, that your mother was right. That's what my mother did with her boys and girls. We had to learn to do all the things that would allow us to function independently as human beings, in the absence of anybody to do it for you. I mean, it helps to have somebody to share or whatever else, but your great grandfather. Okay, I was wondering at first if you said your grandfather, because I was going to say I didn't think your grandfather would say that to you, but I know Tamika. She's a Black Rock girl, so now I don't believe you should cook to get anybody. I think you should be able to cook because you have to eat, and that applies to males as well. Jenny, what do you think?
I think so. I think that it should be 50-50. I don't think that I should have to cook just to get some person. Sometimes a woman does all that she can, and if a man wants to leave, he would. So
And there's nothing wrong with the man cooking if he can cook better than you.
Correct. Right. Sure. But as we come to a close tonight, Miss McLean, I want to thank you so much for having me on because I know you're the original Marcia Week show person. I want to thank Marcia and Dave for allowing me to have this opportunity. I know I did have a lot of technical issues at first, which I do apologize. But I want to thank the entire loyal opposition for bearing with me. I want to thank every single person who came on tonight and shared with us, from Melissa Howard to Paul, John to Cassius. I think that tonight was very educating. We can take a page from Cassius, but we can see what's happening in Bahamas and how Cassius is on to not have corruption in his country. So I think that we can continue to fight the good fight as Marcia does.
Well, thanks a lot, and I enjoyed sharing the program with you. I think the a number of issues that we raised that even as we look to celebrate Christmas and look forward to the new year, we're going forward in a situation where right now some families have had grief reopened, or at least in some sense it may also be closure, perhaps with the kind of gruesome discovery we had recently. My worry for the region as well is the whole issue not only of trafficking of drugs and getting them to other places, but the use of drugs. And I really hope that as a people we can start looking at how we build ourselves in ways that will allow us to grow and make this country and this region a much better place for us. And certainly in my case, for me as an older person looking to the what I would call the autumn of my life. I mean, you're in the spring or whatever, but I'm moving into autumn. I deliberately will not say fall because I don't plan to fall. So. But thank you very much, and I trust that Marcia will have you on again and again. She thinks very highly of you as a hardworking young woman, and I know she has some very impressive young men, and so you have joined the group of young people that Marcia continues to mentor. And to Dave, we say thank you very much
Thanks, Dave.
for your
Yes.
patience and your guidance and your tenacity and everything to keep us going. Because one thing I want Barbadians to understand, and viewers of this show, the loyal opposition, it works. Whatever the challenges, it demonstrates the resilience of the people behind the show, Dave and Marcia Weeks.
Yes,
And I just say thank you very much. And over to you, Dave.
good night, everyone.
Why can't this Christmas feeling go on? Why can't we learn to live together? Not for a day or a season, but for a little bit longer. Oh, why can't this feeling go on? Why can't this Christmas feeling go on? Why can't we learn to live together? Not for a day or a season, but for a little bit longer. Oh, why can't this feeling go on?
All right. Well, good night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and I look forward to hearing and joining you on Sunday. I trust that there will be full support for Marcia's program on Sunday evening. Good evening. God bless.